Thank you. I will start over. I call to order the regular meeting of the Morris Township Planning Board. Um, November 21st, 2022. The legal notice required in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act has been satisfied, and the statement certifying the same will be executed. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we get to the roll call, we have a new member of the Planning Board joining us this evening, Mr. Barrett. Would you, should I?
If you don't mind, or if you'll stand and raise
Stand
your
at
right
the-
hand, or you could come up here. It's my privilege to give you the oath of allegiance. If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me, I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the State of New Jersey,
of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear
that I will bear
faith and allegiance to same
faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments
and to the governments
established in the United States
established in the United States
and in this state
and in this state
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of the people.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And there's more. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially, and justly
impartially, and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of office of the Planning Board,
of office of the planning board,
alternate member,
alternate member,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. And you did that. I was reading. You did it without.
So you can join us up here. Okay. Very nice. Thank you for agreeing to serve.
Yes.
We intend to keep you very busy. I'd like to rearrange the order a little bit to recognize the roll call. We won't adjust the
First
order
things
yet.
first.
Roll call. Thank you, Sonia.
Mr. Vine,
Here.
Mr. Dorsey,
Here.
Mr. Quillen,
Here.
Mr. Alesco,
Here.
Ms. Wilson,
Here.
Ms. Van Order,
Here.
Mr. Flowers,
Here.
Mr. Barrett,
Here.
Mr. Warner,
Here.
Mr. Hanson,
Here.
Mr. Phillips,
Here.
and I'm Santiago here.
And
Mr. Benoit,
and I, Edward Benoit, I'm here as well. Now we'll adjust the order of events. We'd like to present a recognition to one of our past board members, Mr. Jesse Carr, who served as our fire liaison for a number of years. I'll read this into the record and then Mr. Carr can come up. Resolution of the Morris Township Planning Board in recognition and appreciation to Jesse Carr. Whereas the Planning Board of the Township of Morris desires to acknowledge the many years of devoted service given to this board by Class B board member Jesse Carr. And whereas Jesse Carr is a lifelong resident of Morris Township, having graduated from Morristown High School in 1987 and attended New Jersey City University, where he pursued a degree in fire science. And whereas Jesse Carr has continuously been a Morris Township firefighter since his graduation from high school in 1987, has been a career member of the Morris Township Fire Department ever since, having honorably served the department in several positions and serving as its chief from January 1, 2016 to April 30th, 2020. And whereas Jesse Carr has served as a valued member of the Planning Board from April 2013 to May 2020, serving as the Class 2 member as the Township Fire official and providing the board with invaluable guidance and input drawn from his vast knowledge of emergency service provision and fire prevention measures. And whereas Jesse Carr has employed his planning skills and displayed his diplomatic wisdom in analyzing and deciding all matters before the planning board, including land development applications. And whereas Jesse Carr has consistently demonstrated high moral and ethical standards and outstanding character and leadership qualities as a model for each member of this board to strive to replicate. And whereas after years of distinguished service, which has proven to be a significant asset to the citizens of Morris Township, Jesse Carr has retired from the planning board. Now therefore be resolved by the planning board of the Township of Morris that the planning board formally recognizes Jesse Carr for his many years of diligent public service with the planning board and it's for his tireless effort and dedication to all the residents of Morris Township. And then I certify this is a true copy of a resolution of the Morris Township Planning Board, duly adopted on the 21st day of November, 2022.
Yeah.
I enjoyed my years on the board. It was a pleasure serving, and I miss the township.
Ah.
I miss you.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if
Absolutely.
Chief, just wanted to thank you for all of your years of service, not only in the fire department, but on the planning board. I knew you through the fire department. You're still a longtime resident of Fairchild, and we're just so lucky to have someone as dedicated to Morris Township as you have been over the past several decades, and your family has been for decades longer. So thank you for everything you did behind the scenes in headquarters, but also on the planning board. And thank you for everything you did for responding to emergencies as a firefighter, an EMT, and everything in between. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you for still being here. You still come out to our calls and offer guidance on fire scenes too. So, you know, you just continue to give back to our community. So thank you for everything.
I just want to say how much I just want to say how much I enjoyed working with you. We worked on the planning board for, I don't know, I think it was about a year. I always appreciated the expertise you brought to the table and with your fire background. And I know you did the site plan review committee too. I appreciated that work. It was very important. And I worked with you in my role as on the fire standing committee, which I enjoyed and appreciated your contributions, like Mark said, to our fire department and to our community for a very long time. So it's great to see you and thank you so much for your service to our community.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. Moving on. We have a couple resolutions. Mr. Warner, do you want to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's been a little while since the Madison fee owner hearing, but that resolution is carried forward. Preliminary and final major site plan approval variance relief in connection with reutilization of the existing commercial building for laboratory and office space at 299 Madison Avenue. A series of bulk variance relief, and the board granted it, I believe, almost unanimously, and with multiple conditions of approval. Hopefully, we accurately memorialized it by way of this resolution. We will find out right now. Hopefully, the board will move second and adopt it.
Any motions?
And we do have a
I'm not voting on this, so I'm just gonna.
right. Okay, but you were not a recusal, but a nay. Okay, thank you.
Members, any motion? I see my name isn't on here either.
I move we approve the resolution.
Mr. Bai, second.
I'll second it.
Ms. Van Order on the motion.
Okay.
Mr. Quillen?
You may not hear you because you're not close to the mic.
I'm sorry, I thought, I didn't realize we were voting. Yes, I vote, this is a roll call vote, Sonia?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Mr. Flowers?
Yes.
Ms. Van Order?
Yes.
Mr. Bai?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warner?
Sir, this next resolution is of a little more recent vintage. The Red Bulls Arena Inc. resolution. I actually do have one very modest, in my opinion, modification to request, and that's page 21, paragraph 45. There was a sentence regarding the traffic study being over-inclusive because it estimated traffic impact for the proposal prior to the elimination of the front office used for Building A. We had added a second part to that, and ultimately the elimination of Field 9. I stand or sit corrected because the elimination of Field 9 did not reduce the traffic estimate. It redirected, relocated traffic per the testimony of the traffic expert. So I would propose eliminating that last phrase and ultimately the elimination of Field 9 in the middle of paragraph 45 on page 21. That's the only change I have.
Board members, any other changes? Comments?
Yeah, I have a couple. And some are questions. So with the elimination of Field 9, wasn't that a turf field? So do we have 2 turf fields now or 1?
Now eliminate, Field 9 was a grass field, I believe, because that was the Youth Academy field. I don't believe that was turf.
That's where I looked on the map.
It was grass.
What?
It was grass.
So with the elimination of Field 9, there's 7 grass fields and 2 turf fields?
No, that was the original proposal. We lay it out as the original proposal. It would be now 6, I guess, for grass fields, but the reason why we lay it out in the front is that's what was originally proposed.
Oh, I
And
see.
then the modification, the elimination of Field 9, in essence, comes later.
Okay, because that same 7-2 is referenced later too, so.
Well,
On
certainly it
page
wouldn't be part
4.
of the site plan approval because the site plan was modified. So
Okay, and 9 is the correct number of buildings?
I believe so. That might have been counting the smaller structures as well, the buildings and ground structures.
Okay, on page 2, item 5, it says about the 5th line down, it says for the aforementioned chiller and generator, and I think that should be the aforementioned ground fuel storage tank.
You are correct. My apologies. Thank you. That's variance 5, page 2, the second 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line down. Chiller and generator should be amended to be above ground fuel storage tank.
On page 9, this is a question. You have the areas located north. We're talking the agility area are to the northeast of the site by Field 5. I think that's the northwest.
I don't have
Is
in
it?
front of me. I'd have
I
to
looked
look.
on the map, and I'm
It should be northwest.
Northwest? Okay. And I'm sorry, that's paragraph 17?
it's at the top of the page.
Oh, very
there.
top, agility area. Okay, thank you. Yes, no, that definitely is the northwest, my apologies, not northeast.
Page 25. I believe you left out the word without. Finds that the proposal can be granted substantial major detriment to the public good. I think the word without should be in there.
Absolutely, just at which point? would
It's
that be?
item 55, the second line, going into the
Granted.
third line.
Exactly, got it, thank you. That's a phrase that appears a few times on that page, that's why I asked, thank you.
Okay, and the final is on page 28, item 21. A condition of approval, the applicant shall obtain dark skies certification from the IDA. And I just wanted to clarify, if you look at the certification materials, there's 2 different types of certification. One is just they look at the design, And the second, more thorough certification is that they actually review the site after the construction is done. So I wanted to, when I was bringing this up in the hearing, I intended the two-part certification. I just wanted to clarify that's the applicant's understanding or not.
You'll need to give me 1 second as I check with Mr. Amorosa. He's texting
I-
me as we speak. I'm sorry if that's going.
And just for the record, Mr. Rassiopi is applicant's counsel here in light of the fact that we're adopting the resolution this evening.
So we will do it per Ms. Wilson's request.
Okay, so the applicant shall obtain dark sky certification from the IDA. I want to say full. Dark sky. Certification from the IDA, both with respect to, and I'm sorry, that was
To the design and to the
Design.
evaluation after construction.
design and post-construction review. Should be, it should, and we have the affirmative stipulation confirmation from applicant's counsel. So that's an additional revision.
That's it.
We got, I hope we got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Any other board
Wilson.
members? I'm not sure what we would do with that, Ms. Wilson.
Years
Madam
of
Chairman?
proofreading.
Mr. Quillen?
I move that we adopt the resolution with the changes that were suggested by Ms. Wilson, by Deputy Mayor Wilson.
Motion by Mr. Quillen, second.
And just for confirmation, can we include my one suggestion as well?
And your suggestion as well, Mr. Warner. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Wilson. On the roll call?
Mr. Quillen,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Torpe,
Yes.
Mr. Flowers,
Yes.
Lesso,
Yes.
Mr. Benoit,
Yes.
so moved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, we have 3 public hearings scheduled for this evening. Mr. Warner, do you want to lead off these? Or actually, Ms. Santiago, you want to read the first one?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Our first application for tonight is DB 10-22, Order of St. Benedict of New Jersey, Del Barton, for site plan variance. This is block 4501, lot 201, 230 Mendon Road in the OSTU zone. Applicant proposes installation of new freestanding signs at the 3 existing entrances of the school, creating a front yard setback of 17 feet on the west gate and 15 feet on the east gate on Mendon Road, where 25 feet is required. Applicant will also seek the variance relief to allow for 2 signs to be located on Mendon Road, where 1 is permitted.
And Mr. Chairman, I
Mr.
did have
Marr?
an opportunity to review the content of the notice, found it to be sufficient as well as timely served, published on November 8th, certified mail November 7th, both at least 10 days prior to this evening. So the board does, in my opinion, have jurisdiction to hear and decide the application this evening.
Council?
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Martin Newmark. I'm with the firm of Porter, Bromberg and Newman. I'm pleased to represent the Del Barton School in this application.
Marty, can you please use the microphone? Thank you.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll say it again. I'm Martin Newmark, Porgio, Bromberg and Newman. I have Eric Keller here to testify in support of this application. Eric may not look like it, but he's wearing 2 hats tonight. He is a licensed engineer, and he is also a licensed traffic engineer and a licensed planner. So he will provide all the testimony that you'll hear tonight. Having said that, I'm going to just ask that he be sworn, and I'm going to ask that he present the application to the board.
Certainly. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll swear in our board professionals as well. Mr. Hanson and Mr. Phillips, do all three of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you all.
And in terms of qualifications,
Well, let's first, would you tell the board your qualifications in the field of professional planning?
Certainly. My name is Eric Keller, Keller, with Bowman Consulting Group. My licenses are still in good standing from 2 weeks ago when I appeared before this board for another application which has got approved, providing engineering and planning testimony and traffic engineering. So my professional engineer's license and planner's license are still in good standing.
And you have appeared before boards of this kind previously,
Yes,
many times?
many times.
I offer the gentleman as an expert in the field of professional planning and in the field of traffic engineering.
no objection. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May proceed, make the presentation.
Okay. I don't know if you want me to put up the site plans that were submitted as part of this application. I'm going to use those as the basis for my testimony. Okay. And I think I got this, I think I have this down. Okay. So the set of plans that were submitted are a 4-sheet set of plans entitled preliminary and final. Come on, get out of my way. I'm sorry. For Del Barton entry sign improvements. So Del Barton is seeking approval.
You know, they're up there.
Yes. Del Barton is seeking approvals to replace the existing signs at each of the school driveways, the East Gate, West Gate along Mendham Road, and South Gate on Sugarloaf Road. Specifically, the variances we seek tonight are as follows. Sign area for each of the 3 signs. The East and West Gate, 65 square feet is proposed versus 32 square feet permitted. The South Gate is 37.9 square feet versus 32 square feet. The allowable sign size is set forth in 95-39C1 of the Township ordinance. The sign setback for the East and West Gates is also a variance that we're seeking for the East Gate. It's 15 feet versus 25 feet. At the West Gate, it's 17 feet versus 25 feet. Also, the number of signs. Only 2 signs are permitted. 3 exist. There are 3 existing signs at all of the entrances to Del Barton, and 3 are proposed. The 3 existing signs, of course, will be removed, hopefully, and these 3 signs in their place. So I'm just going to jump to the last sheet of the site plan set, which basically shows the general parameters of the sign. The large panel is proposed at the East and West Gate, and the smaller panel is proposed at South Gate. Obviously, the larger signs are along Mendham Road where you have higher speed limits. Sugarloaf, we don't need as large a sign because it's a low speed local road. And then we have the columns on each end, again, to go with the size of the panels, the pillars, pilasters that are proposed along Mendham Road are larger to accommodate the larger sign panel, and the one on Sugarloaf is smaller.
Mr. Keller, let me interrupt briefly and ask you, with respect to each of the panels, how large are they?
So the large panel is 30 square feet, and which is the East and West Gate. On the South Gate, the sign panel is 18.5 square feet. So as you can see on sheet 4 of the plans, you have the sign panel, you have the 2 pillars on either side, and on each of those, you have the Del Barton medallion to show the founding principles of the school. The signs on East and at the East and West Gate are both double-sided. The one on Sugarloaf Road is single-sided. Really, we're only worried about traffic coming in from Jockey Hollow Road. So when we met with the township professionals at the TCC meeting, as has been the policy in the past with the township, the sign area includes not only the panels, but the columns on either side. So now, Mr. Newmark asked me for the east and west gate, the panel is 30 square feet. The columns themselves are 17 and a half square feet each. So when you add all that up, you get the 65 square feet. The medallions on east and west gate are 1.8 square feet, but since they're mounted on the column, they're already subsumed in the overall square footage. For the south gate sign, as I said, the sign panel is 18 and a half square feet. The columns themselves are 9.7 square feet. Add that all up and you get 37.9. The medallions on that column are 0.8 square feet. So the other variance is the setback variance for the east and west gates. And that's really a function of visibility along Mendham Road. You have a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit on Mendham Road. So we want to maximize the visibility of these signs. And if we place them at 25 feet back from the right-of-way line, that would physically place them 41 feet at the east gate and 36 feet at the west gate from the edge of pavement, which is really kind of the functional measurement when you look at this, putting my traffic engineer's hat on for a moment. And what we've done is we've prepared some exhibits. They're going to be a little hard to see up on even on the screens. So I have 11 by 17s if the board thinks that would be helpful.
I think you should distribute them.
While you're doing that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the last revised date on the plan set that was shown, just for confirmation purposes.
Thank you. Mr. Warner, let me go back to that. These plans have not been revised. They are dated 9/12/22.
Right. My recollection is there was an earlier version of them, so in essence, they've been revised, but that is the most recent version.
Yeah, so this set of plans that I'm talking to tonight are dated that date and have no revisions.
I'm sorry, is that 9/12?
12. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with the west gate, which is sheet 1 of 3. Thank you, Paul. What we did is we actually mocked up the sign and placed it out in the field, first at 25 feet back from the right of way, and then at the proposed setback, which for the west gate is 17 feet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in.
And while you're zooming, I'm going to, this should be marked as Exhibit A1 for the
Do you want to
record.
mark all 3 sheets as A1?
We could just call it a A1. It's a 3-page compendium, and we can refer to each sheet 1, 2, and 3 when you get there.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Warner.
Sure, no, thank you.
So photo location 1 is a sign located 25 feet back. And for that sign, we only have 155 feet of visibility. Sign 2 is where we propose the sign 17 feet back, and we have 255 feet of visibility. And that's to the whole sign panel. So there would be earlier visibility at a greater distance, but only a portion of the sign. Now, in the other photo location 3, again, is with the sign located 25 feet back. and that provides 176 feet of visibility. And then photo location 4 is at the proposed setback. That's 202 feet. And you can see on the right side, the phragmites that are in the wetlands kind of constrain the view. And there's nothing we can do about those because they're in a regulated area. So we're placing it at 17 feet to provide a balance between visibility and not having it, and trying to comply with the ordinance setback as much as possible. Now I'm going to move to the east gate, which is sheet 2, and we've done the same thing, showing the sign at 25 feet back and then at the proposed of 15 feet. And try and make this a little more. So approaching the east gate from Morristown, the east gate driveway is on the left. And you can see the sign is kind of at 25 feet back. It's kind of tucked up against the trees. That only provides 210 feet of visibility. And then photo location 2 at the 15-foot setback, you can see that sign approximately 283 feet in advance. So a much greater visibility at that location. In the eastbound direction, location 3 and 4 both have about 450 feet of visibility because of the curvature of the road and the location of the sign. It really doesn't make that much of a difference where you place it. But coming from Morristown, there is a greater impact on the sign by placing it at the setback. Now, with these, at the east location, this sign would still be set back 31 feet from the edge of pavement. And for the west gate, it would be set back 26 feet from the edge of pavement. Neither of these sign locations are impacted by the site distance. So if you're sitting at the driveway waiting to exit the site, these signs will not be in your view shed. And that shows on the site plan set that was submitted. Now, the final drawing is Southgate.
Before we get to Southgate, let me
Yeah.
interrupt and ask you, from the point of view of a traffic engineer, is compliance with the ordinance safer than the deviations we are asking for, or is it the other way around? The deviations are a safer operation than what is set forth in the ordinance?
It's a safer operation to place the signs closer to the roadway, closer to the right of way, because that will provide greater visibility and opportunity for those people who are not coming to Del Barton on a regular basis to know where they're going.
Mr. Keller, your planning hat for a moment?
Yes.
Yes, as a planner, would that satisfy the criteria for a flexible C2 variance?
It would, and as soon as I get through this exhibit, I'll put my planning hat on and finish up with my planning testimony.
Okay.
Which will be brief.
We'll do it your way.
Okay, thank you. Real quick on the Southgate plans, the only variance we're seeking there is, I guess, the number of signs and the sign size. This setback is compliant. We propose a setback of 20 feet. And at that location, which is a lower speed roadway, we're providing 200 feet of site visibility as you approach from Jockey Hollow Road. And for those coming from the other direction on Sugarloaf, it would be 260 feet.
And what is the speed limit on that road?
25 miles an hour. So that's the signs. That's a summary of what we're seeking. Now, putting my planning hat on, we believe that C2 relief is appropriate for these variances, wherein the purposes of planning, as outlined in the municipal land use law, will be advanced by the deviation. and the benefits of the deviation will substantially outweigh any detriments. We also believe that the sign setback variances on Mendham Road could also be considered a C1 hardship, in that because of the roadway alignment, because of the roadside vegetation, which are factors beyond our control, some of these signs will need permits by rule for riparian zone disturbance, and also a wetland transition area waiver. That's for the Westgate, because the sign sits in the wetland transition area, which is 150 feet. Those are the phragmites I talked about on sheet 1 of the exhibits. The disturbance of the ground in the area of these signs is currently lawn. So we're going to obviously remove some lawn area, put the signs in, the pillars in, and then we're going to restore that lawn area. So there's no tree removal. There is no other landscape disturbance. And this goes to the Environmental Commission's report, which is why we don't have a landscape plan, is that we're not taking anything out except lawn area and restoring that. So the signs are necessary to identify the school and guide visitors to the various access points. That's why the existing signs are out there, but they're not really functional. They're old, they're small, they're not really visible. Actually, the Eastgate sign is located in the right-of-way. It's not even on the school's property. So we're bringing these signs more into conformance from a locational point of view. I think if you're familiar with the existing signs out there, I think these are much more visually attractive than the existing signs. And so the sign panels themselves are conforming in size and are of an appropriate size to provide sufficient visibility from a distance, particularly on Mendham Road, where you need to have a larger letter size so that drivers traveling at the speed limit can actually read these at a sufficient distance in advance. The proposed signs, in my opinion, are also aesthetically pleasing and are commensurate with the high standards established at Delbarton. The number of signs is a function of the number of access points. There's 3 existing signs. We're providing 3 proposed signs. None of the signs are visible from the other. The 2 signs on Mendham Road at Eastgate and Westgate are about 2,000 feet apart. And obviously Southgate's on the other side of the campus. In my opinion, the purposes of planning that are advanced are purpose A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands. Purpose H, to encourage the location and design of transportation routes which will promote the free flow of traffic. And I, to promote a desirable visual environment through good civic design and arrangement. Now, I have to talk about negative criteria. I wouldn't be doing my job as a planner. And for the C2, we have to, the negative criteria show that the relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. In my opinion, there will be no substantial impact to the neighborhood as these signs do not obstruct the sight lines from any driveway. They're aesthetically pleasing. The sign setbacks are appropriate and are an increase over the existing while balancing visibility for approaching vehicles with setback compliance. As I've said, we've taken the conservative approach. The past practice of this board and township is that we've included this supporting sign structure into our area calculation. The panel itself complies. It's the columns that generate the variance. Regardless, we believe the proposed signs to be visually appealing and compatible with the surrounding area. As such, there will be no substantial impairment to the zoning ordinance. In addition, there will be no substantial impact to the zone plan as the signs themselves are permitted. They provide a necessary function in identifying Delbarton at each of their access driveways. The deficiency in the setbacks at the east and west gates are nominal and are required to provide for safe traffic operations. The columns themselves provide a decorative and visually appealing framing of the sign panel. And again, the number of signs is a function of the unique access configuration of the site. That's the conclusion of my direct testimony. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you. Board members, any questions for this witness? Ms. Wilson?
So on the landscape, it's only grass and lawn that's disturbed by putting the signs in?
Correct.
And so you'll replace the existing grass that's disturbed with other grass?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you comment on the lighting of the signs?
We are showing uplights on each of the signs. The school is still making the decision as to whether they're going to do it. But we are showing lighting on the plans. That was part of the discussions with the TCC. They are LED fixtures. They would be essentially spotlights right onto the sign face.
So you're not sure if you're going to do that?
No, we're seeking approval of that because we don't want to have to come back and ask for the lights. But the school is still evaluating, you know, getting power out there and everything else. So we're looking at options.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Quillen? You're on mute.
He put his finger up.
Yeah,
Oh.
sorry, it took me a while to unmute myself. First, I had to get my picture back up on my screen. Thank you. I had a few questions. One is, you mentioned the size of the lettering, Mr. Keller. The lettering is larger on the proposed signs on Mendham Road than the rear. What is the size of the lettering on those proposed Mendham Road signs as compared to the lettering on the current signs that are on Mendham Road?
Well, the larger sign, the ones on Mendham Road, the Del Barton is about a 10-inch high letter. And on the Sugarloaf, it's 7.5. I don't know the size of the lettering on the existing signs. I know that the signs, we did not measure them because they're mounted really high in the air. They're about 12 or 16 square feet total. So the lettering is much smaller, but I don't know exactly what size letter it is.
Another question I have is the photographs you showed where you had set up the signs, set up signs of the size that you're proposing in the locations that you're proposing that they go and in alternate locations required by the code. In those pictures, you have a sign that's the size that you're proposing, right? The actual sign is the size you're proposing?
Correct.
But the sign is held up by posts which are much smaller than the columns you're proposing. Is that right?
That's correct. We use some sort of metal post or something to put up the sign. The main part was to get the sign panel itself.
And to measure from the right of way to where the sign is, you measured to where the post is? Or
Yeah, the 17 feet or 15 feet is measured to the leading edge of the column. So the sign panel itself is, hold on. The columns on Mendham Road are 28 inches square. So the sign panel is set back at Westgate, not 17 feet, but 19 feet, 4 inches.
That's what you mocked up when you created these photographs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I also wanted to ask you about the rear entrance sign. That sign on the plans, I believe it's shown with a different orientation rather than being perpendicular to the road by which you access the property. It's perpendicular to the driveway itself. Is that correct?
Generally, yes. And we've done that, and this is photo location 2 on sheet 3 of exhibit A1. We've placed the sign. There's this paved area that juts out next to the driveway, and we've placed the sign right there. Most of the traffic that's using Southgate is coming up from Jockey Hollow Road, which is why we don't have a double-sided sign. In this picture, you can actually see the existing sign that's mounted on a tree, or what's left of a tree.
Having trouble understanding what I'm looking at here. So this, I see a road in the distance that has a yellow stripe down the center.
That is the extension of Sugarloaf Road into the park.
Okay.
And then you have the tree stump, the very tall tree stump with the Del Barton sign on it here. And then off to the right is the driveway into Del Barton. And then the white panel off to the right is the proposed sign location. So obviously this sign on the tree comes down.
And then to the nearer right, just in front of the sign, that's just sort of a bump out on the road. It's like a turnaround area.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the purpose of that is, but that pavement's there.
Okay. Now you mentioned that for this location, the setback requirement in the code is less, I guess, because the speed limit on this road is less. So the
Correct.
speed limit on this road is 25. The speed limit on Mendham Road in that location where the east and west gates are is it 40 or 45?
45.
45?
Yes.
So, so the code requires that for a higher speed limit, you have a higher setback for signs. And yet, I'm sorry, you didn't respond because I didn't ask a question. I understand.
No,
So I'm just wondering.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cullen. The setback is different because the sign panel is smaller. It doesn't have to do with the speed limit of the road. It's that the sign panel is smaller. It's less than 20 square feet.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
You bet.
I don't believe I have any other questions at this time. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Have a
Mr.
question.
Barrett?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Mr. Keller, I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
In terms of the setback on, let's start with Mendham Road. And I appreciate that having the setback at 25 feet would give a driver greater visibility.
No, less visibility.
I'm sorry, if it's nearer to the road, the setback is 17 feet,
Correct.
greater
Yes.
visibility
Sorry.
approaching the sign, correct?
Yes.
Are you saying that, I just want to make sure I understand this, if we conform to code, which is 25 feet
Correct.
setback, are you suggesting that that would be unsafe in terms of visibility, or is the 17 feet more ideal?
As a I'll put my traffic engineer's hat on now. I don't like to use the terms unsafe. I would say it is less safe. It gives less time for somebody to see the sign, react, brake. And the last thing you want to do is to have somebody on Mendham Road stop short. So having the sign closer to the right of way, closer to the edge of pavement, provides greater opportunity for a motorist to see the sign, react, and turn safely into the driveway.
And I appreciate that point. What's your opinion on a sign with a 25-foot setback? Is that safe in your opinion? I know it's 17 is better than 25 for purposes of this discussion, but is a 25 feet setback, is that safe?
I believe it is insufficient visibility for motorists, and that it increases the opportunity for crashes at that location.
Okay. And in terms of motorists, what are we talking about here? We're talking about primarily visitors to Delbarton?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the staff, the parents who bring their children, those students who are of driving age, they know where they're going, they know which driveway they're going to. But you have sports teams, you have visitors, you have other guests that are coming, to Delbarton, and they need to have identification as to which driveway they're turning into.
Do you have a sense for a typical week, what percentage of vehicular traffic constitute visitors?
I don't.
Would you say it's less than 10%?
I wouldn't even want to get. It would be a pure guess. So
But
as a professional, I can't do that.
Would you
I
say-
don't know.
Would you say the majority are either staff, faculty, or students though?
I don't know what, Mr. Barrett, what percentage are people, who need guidance as to coming to the facility. I couldn't put a number to it.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members?
Yeah.
Mayor?
Can we go back on lighting? So it's going to be uplit. Would that lighting be all night long, or would it be shut off at a certain hour, kind of like we discussed a few weeks ago at a different application?
Well, you do have entries to a,
Yeah.
Matt Davis, by the way,
Oh, sorry.
To-
the Chief
They should be
Financial
sworn.
Operations
Let's
Officer.
have him
Yeah,
sworn.
please raise your right hand. Do you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And again, it's Matt Davis,
Matthew
Davis,
You're gonna have to come up here.
and your position
Chief Financial and Operations Officer for Delbarton.
for the applicant. Okay, this is back testimony. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So the question was on the lighting. We're still looking at the options on lighting, as we stated earlier. We do believe it needs some light because otherwise the signs wouldn't be seen at night. You do have both school functions and you have the monks that live on the property and have visitors too. So I think we would have to get into a discussion as to what would be optimal and whether it could be dimmed at a certain point or whatever. But we do believe that probably some light is necessary.
Mr. Davis, the question is, would you be agreeable to cutting it off at a certain hour?
The short answer is I'd be agreeable to discussing it because you do have people that live on the campus 24 hours a day. So I'm not the only voice on that. From a school standpoint, I could say, yes, it's up for discussion, but you do have the monks that live on the property as well.
Okay, because this would be the only lit sign on Mendham Road in Morris Township. So I think, and it's in a heavily wooded area and it's a historic area. So I would be, my concern is that this would be out of place in the evening. I'm trying to think of what other sign would be lit on Mendham Road.
There is the existing sign on the post is
Yeah.
lit currently.
Okay, but this is, as just stated in testimony, it's a much larger sign, much more visible, not only to residents, but drivers. To me, I would think that the folks who would be using the entrance that late at, hours between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. would know where they're going and wouldn't need a sign to be lit. Any visitors, since it's a school complex, would probably be gone by 10 p.m. My opinion would be to have the lights shut off at a pretty reasonable hour, probably at least by 11 p.m. I'm not sure what the standards are. Dave, do we have anything? No. Okay.
And I think I'm agreeable to that. I would just, again, on experts, I'd pose the question, having them not lit at all. If somebody was traveling and veered off the road and hit the sign, is that problematic as well? I don't know.
Problem at 11 o'clock?
No problem.
Thank you. And then just what other question on the existing signs? So they'll be shut off at 11 o'clock. Will they come back on in the morning, or they'll just be shut off at 11?
Well,
Do you need them on at like 6 a.m. for early practice?
possibly in the wintertime.
Okay. Can our
11
professionals
to
look
6
at
a.m.?
whatever precedent is in the township?
I would say they go on a few hours before school would potentially open up.
Okay.
School opens at 8.
So
Students arrive between 7 and 7:30.
Yeah, 11 to 6. Okay. The existing signs, those are they historic? I know that, I mean, they've been there for,
They've been there
a long
but I
time. Are
don't
they
believe they're
being-
historic in nature at all? No.
they're not historic?
No.
Okay, so we don't need the Historic Preservation Commission or anything like that on those?
No.
Okay, and they're being removed, or they're gonna stay, just not,
Removed.
they're being removed?
Basically replacing them, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Ms. Van Order?
Yes. I just had a question about the Southgate entrance.
Yes,
I'm assuming that would not be lit because it's not a main entrance, or would it be also lit with the same parameters?
There is a light on this. There is a light on that sign today. So I would say we'd light it with the same parameters.
Okay, just checking on that. When I look at that, I have a really hard time seeing where, you know, I don't think that's a great location because of this pull-off that appears to happen right in front of it. And I just wondered, and surely you thought this through, so you can just explain to me why you didn't do it, and it probably has to do with variances that you don't want to get, but wouldn't the location be better? I mean, that's not a tree that's worth saving. It's cut off. Was there any consideration to putting the sign closer to like getting rid of that tree and putting it down there?
I'd love to, but I can't get a permit from the DEP. The problem is, and if you look at, this is, so Mr. Warner doesn't yell at me, this is sheet 3 of Exhibit A1. This dark line here is the 150-foot setback. I'm sorry. Yeah. So inner 150-foot setback of the riparian zone to the C1 waterway. DEP is really frowns upon putting anything within a 150-foot inner riparian zone. So we placed it on this side of the road so that we don't have to have a fight with DEP. That
Thank
was
you.
our reason.
Okay, I thought there'd be a good reason for that. Thanks.
I mean, we still need, this is a permit by rule, which we just, basically say, we're doing this. Don't have to file any application. I go to the other side of the driveway, you gotta file an application, you gotta pay a fee, and it's not worth it for the sign.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Board members?
Just one other question, going back to the lighting. Do you already have power at all the sign locations?
Yes.
You do? Okay, thank you.
Just as a clarification, I went through the sign ordinance. There's no regulation or direction on signs off, signs on. For timing.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Lesso?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a practical comment to the other board members. I'm a firefighter in town. I go to this complex every now and then for calls. If I'm on Sugarloaf, I have no idea where to turn. That light needs to be lit. And coming down Mendham Road, I know kind of where Del Barton is, but I've driven by the entrances many times and had to stop. So I think that we might want to consider some type of a grope light, something that's smaller. I mean, you've got a light there. If they're stipulating to 11 o'clock, I think we should feel comfortable with that. So just wanted to share that as a practical use from an emergency perspective. Not a student, not a visitor, not a guest, not a monk coming back home from church.
An important consideration, does that change the 11 to 6 calculus?
It would for me, but if the applicants can come through at 11 o'clock and the rest of the board is, I don't need to muddy the water.
Okay, thank you. On the lighting, I have a quick question. We're talking about dark sky lighting. Is it possible to put some sort of shades on the side so that the light's not visible to motorists coming up, but it only shines right on the sign?
Yes, that's the intent. Yeah, that's the intent.
Okay.
It's the intent.
Okay.
I don't know if they're dark sky compliant because they're on the ground, they're shining up.
Right.
So, but we will make sure that they are not
can't
intrusive to to the passing motorist.
Speed in New Jersey.
Or going above the sign if not necessary.
Correct.
I have no idea if that's a dark sky compliant issue, but it's in my mind that maybe something can be done, and that sounds to me like something that can be done. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Bai?
Again, about the lighting. As I recall from the previous application, the lighting in the parking lots, the new parking lot by the field house, I think was stipulated to be turned off at 10, but the lights lining the roadways are on all night long, I believe. That was it. And that will stay. And there's lights at that entrance there. The lights, at least I'm not sure about Sugarloaf, but both the east and west entrances, there are lights along the roadway almost down to those intersections anyways, right?
Correct.
So those lights will remain on, as I recall, all night. So even if the sign light goes off, those roadways are still lit at night, late at night.
Sugarloaf, the entrance off Sugarloaf doesn't have any lights on because that was a proposal a number of years ago
Okay.
for a zoning permit. And we pushed back and said it needed site plan approval.
Okay,
And it never came in.
but east and west, those
East and west,
entrances
yeah,
are lit all the way
there's
down.
lights on
Okay,
all the time.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Board members? If not,
Wait, are you saying that lights are on the existing signs all the time?
I don't know that for a fact, but the lights in the driveway are on all night long.
The one, at least the sign on the sign at least, and I can picture this one because it's the gate I go in and out of, on the east gate, again, it's up higher, but there is a light on that sign that's on at least, dusk to dawn at this point. But it's a bulb. It's not anything substantial.
I don't know. I can see a benefit of leaving it on, like what Mr. Alesso was talking about, but I can also see the other side of turning it off. I don't have a sense of how bright it would be.
I think that's part of it, yeah. Maybe if it could be dimmed, it would satisfy the emergency vehicles
Right.
and not be offensive.
I mean, we haven't finalized the sign, the lighting details for this. I mean, we can work with the township engineer on, we don't need a lot of light. The signs aren't that large. I mean, they're 30 square feet. It's not like a sign in a commercial area, which would be much larger. I know that LED parking lot lights, you can get them where they would dim. I don't know if we can do that with these kind of lights. I don't know, because there's extra controls and things like that. And I don't know if that's going to be possible with this. What I can say is that we can work with the township engineer on a light that is sufficient to illuminate the sign, but not, we're not looking to have a, really bright light. Something that would be, as the mayor indicated, in keeping with the historic nature of this area. But enough that Mr. Alesso is going to find that driveway when he goes flying up there.
I'd find it.
You know the area better.
Mayor, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. So you can work with the engineering department and the light provider to come up with something that will satisfy those concerns.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
But the hours that we're saying are till 11, and
Well, that would be between 11 and 6, the good faith effort to find a low, for lack of a better word, dimmed light for the signs.
I think what I was implying was that we would leave these on dusk to dawn, but they would be of an appropriate level of illumination to illuminate the sign so you can see it, but not be intrusive to the neighborhood.
okay.
I'm okay with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Board professionals. Did I miss anyone?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Phillips?
Eric, did you indicate what the existing setback of the east and west gate signs?
Well, I did indicate, I gotta find my little cheat sheet here. The east gate sign is 9 foot 4 inches into the right of way. It is not on the school's property. The west gate sign is 3.75 feet from the property line. The Southgate tree is Southgate tree. The sign's on the tree, which is probably very close to the right of way.
So notwithstanding the fact that you're seeking relief, you're bringing the east and west, forget the tree sign, it's a greater compliance even though you still need relief, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I just want to be clear on the Southgate sign because you are at 20 feet.
Correct.
And I thought you indicated that that's compliant with the zoning, and it depends on how you measure the area of the sign. If we're including everything, that sign is 37.9 square feet, which, if I read the ordinance, would require 25 feet as a setback. So
I guess
you may be just doing the sign area on that one. Right?
we were, so if we,
Technically, I think you need that variance also on the Southgate sign.
okay. And all the planning reasons, the proofs that I had for the east and west gate signs, I applied to the south gate sign.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Mr. Hanson? Oh, actually, you said no. Mr. Warner?
Just real quick to confirm on the lighting, because you said there's a possibility that you might not do the uplighting at all. I just want to, am I correct in my understanding, though, that you will not do internally lit signs?
No,
Meaning I'm correct. You
you're
won't do
correct.
that.
We were not doing an internally illuminated sign.
Thank you. And just for the record, I just wanted to note that the site visit memo, inspection report, and the chief's fire official report had no comments, no questions, no concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll open up questions to members of the public. If any members of the public have questions on this, please come up and state your name. I see none. Seeing none, we'll close the public question period. And board members, any
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, public comment.
public comment? Thank you. We'll do that too. Any members of the public have comment? I see, well, Mr. Quillen. So we'll go back to public comment period. Any members of the public have comments on this application? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period. I see Mr. Quillen's hand is up. Are you on mute?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Having technical problems tonight. If this is the time for comments by board members, I would like to say I'm not fond of these signs at all. I don't think they're attractive. And it bothers me that the applicant is asking for variance from both the requirement for sign size and sign setback. The actual panels themselves, I do think are attractive. The problem is with the columns, which I think are oversized and clunky looking and really not attractive at all, out of keeping with the kind of country character of that stretch of road. And when you combine that with putting them closer to the roadway than the code permits and lighting them up as well, I just have real concerns about this application as it has been presented to us.
Any other board members? Comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would just comment that I think keeping to the historic nature, kind of like what George was talking about, is really important in the stretch of roadway. It's in, I guess, I don't know if it's technically Washington Valley proper. I think it is. And like I said before, there is not a lot of lighting on this roadway aside from streetlights. And it's just something that I think is definitely going to stand out to the public that lives in this area. And that's all I'm just going to say about that. I think it'll, I don't know how much it's going to impact, just the historic nature of it, but I don't necessarily think it's ideal.
Would that be related just to the lighting or to the whole thing?
That's everything.
It's everything. Any other board members have questions, comments?
Yeah, my one comment goes back to my question to Mr. Keller. I'm not sure that granting the variance to have it, the setback closer to the street is ideal in this situation. I certainly understand providing greater visibility to traffic coming close to the entrances, both the east and the west gates. But I sort of balance that against, you're going to have two massive structures closer to the street, and late at night, it's dark. If someone misjudges or slides off the road or veers off the road, those brick structures are going to be unforgiving. So just to have a little bit more leeway, having the setback in conformance with the code is I think is appropriate here.
I tend to think that the visibility is important, and that's, I've been down the road a lot of times, and all of a sudden you're there, and you don't realize it because the sign's up there, and it would be nice if there was a sign, and it needs to be visible. It needs to be visible from a distance. So I tend to think that a large sign, it's a very active driveway. It's a very active school. It's a large sign close enough to the road that's visible will be a big help toward maintaining a safe traffic flow going into the school. So I'm supportive of the proposal as it is. I think that it tries to maintain safety and the size. I can see where the size is important because they have big distances. I don't find the signs offensive. I think they're fairly nice. So that's how I view it. Mr. Lesso?
Mr. Chairman, are we deliberating on the motion?
We don't have a motion yet. We're
Right.
just
So
deliberating.
aren't we out of order? Shouldn't there be a motion seconded?
Technically, no. You can deliberate before you move in second. And
Yeah, we've done
oftentimes,
this.
once there's a motion in a second, there's a roll call vote at that
So
point.
then we wouldn't have further deliberation.
You can have the deliberations now. You can continue the deliberations now.
Then I may as well give my opinion.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I'm in support of this application. I think that these signs are appropriate. I think that the existing signs are closer to the road. These signs are going to be farther from the road. I think that I can sense the concern that Board Member Giarfi has about the character, and maybe there is something that the applicant could work out with our engineer to tone them down as far as the columns are concerned, to make them a little less or a little more country, as opposed to, I look at these signs, these are the same signs at the entrance to St. Elizabeth's College, which I run by every now and then. I'm right next to that school. I think that this high school, St. Elizabeth's College, the Rabbinical College, these are what makes Morristown kind of special. And I think it's appropriate that they have a sign that is of a magnitude for the level of what the school brings to the township. But I certainly understand the desire to make sure that they fit in with the nature of the road. So I would suggest that if we're going to allow the applicant to work with our engineer on lighting, and maybe the applicant can work with our engineer on toning down the width, the length, and maybe the design of the column.
It's a very contemporary design. Yeah.
I don't know if I would use the word contemporary, I'd say a little more country.
Would the applicant be willing to?
The stone was chosen in that it's in keeping with many of the buildings on campus. It's,
Hmm.
when you look at, I've testified before on signs, and what you want to do is to tie everything together. And, while, so that's the reason that this style of pillars were selected, was to pick up the architecture of the buildings on campus.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Van Order?
Thank you, Mr. Keller, for pointing that out. That was what I was going to say, that when I saw those signs, and I don't object to the signs at all. I think they're very attractive, in my opinion, and that's my opinion. It did remind me of, the kind of the anchor structure of the property. I'm pretty familiar with that property, and it seemed to tie it together. So I think having signs that people can see at the distances that you are recommending is prudent, and they're further back than the existing ones. I think they're better looking than the existing ones and will be more functional, and that's my opinion about that.
I would just say I'm not offended by the sign design either. I think it's fine. I'm okay with moving it, the setback variance. I see a benefit to that on visibility. My hesitation is the lighting, and I know we're saying it's going to be we'll work it out, but I don't have a sense of what it's going to be. I don't know. I'm just sort of, what is it going to look like overnight? And I'm wondering if there's any way, could we get a visual? Could we get some kind of sense of what it might look like if the light was on dusk to dawn?
Or absent that, what if we agree to have them off if at some point in the future, from 11 to 6, and if at some point in the future you want to illuminate them during those hours? I'm not sure whether you just go to engineering.
Mr. Chairman? I would propose another possible alternative to that would be to have them off on Mendham Road from 11 to 6 in the morning, but leave the line on the south entrance, since that doesn't have street lighting on that entrance.
Leave them on there.
And both the entrances off Mendham Road are, the roads themselves are lit.
Right. The suggestion was to leave the lights off on Mendham Road, but allow them to be on overnight in the south entrance. Did you want to?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you said leave them on from 11 till 6 in the morning?
Leave them off 11 to 6 on Mendham
Leave them,
Road.
well, I'm sorry, leave them off.
And then on the south entrance. Because there's no
I think
street
that's
lights there.
acceptable. Yeah, that's acceptable. And I might say that I would like to think we could convince Mr. Hanson that some arrangement with respect to the light is such that it will not be offensive. And we'd be happy to have your engineer call that shot, and we would present some things to him, and hopefully we'd be able to convince him that we can spotlight the light right on the wood, and that it's not going beyond that. I think that can be done. I can't imagine why it couldn't be done.
You're talking the overnight, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that. We leave a lot to our engineers after our board approvals, and we've had no complaints.
We can take after everything is in place and set up, we can take pictures and submit them to the board.
Okay.
Maybe we get a 6-month look back.
Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion or any other comments. Mr. Lesso?
I'd like to make a motion. We approve the application with the necessary variance, with the stipulation that the lights will be, I want to get this right, what we've all agreed to, that the lights will be shut off from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., but the applicant can come back within, our engineer will work with the applicant to determine whether or not the lights can be left on and we would have 6-month look back. And the engineer would come back to us within the next 6 months after the lights are on, show us what they look like, and if we don't have a problem with them, the lights can stay. If we have a problem with them, then the applicant would have to shut the lights off at 11 o'clock and live with the 11 to 6.
That is a condition that the applicant would accept.
Okay.
I don't know if I articulated that well, Steve,
The south
but
entrance being on all the time.
With the south entrance
Mr.
remaining
Warner will
on.
figure it out.
Do-
yes, yes. And the south entrance light would be stay on from dawn to dusk.
Got it.
Dusk to dawn, sorry,
Okay.
sorry. sorry.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mr. Bai. On the roll call?
Mr. Quillen,
No.
Mr. Alonso,
Yes.
Mr. Dorsey,
No.
Mr. Flowers,
Yes.
Mr. Bai,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Van Order,
Yes.
Mr. Barrett,
No.
Mr. Benoit.
Yes.
Appreciate the time that you devoted to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was 7-3, right? I mean, 6-3?
6-3.
6-3.
Seven to two.
7-2.
No, it was,
No.
George was a no,
George.
Mark was a no,
George was a no?
and Bill was a no.
George wasn't now.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Okay. So our next public hearing, if we're ready,
Sonia? Don't go anywhere. I think you have to read the next one.
unless, I could read it. She's better at it than I am. Yeah.
Are we ready for the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, next one is 2014-22, Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth for site plan. This is block 8801, lots 1, 12 Compton Road, in the OSPU zone. Applicant proposes to construct a new guardhouse.
Okay, thank you. Counselor?
And Mr. Chairman, I did have an opportunity to review the notice, found the content to be sufficient, found it to be timely served, certified mail November 9, published November 9, both at least 10 days prior to this evening. Board does have jurisdiction to hear and decide the application this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Who was it?
Applicant counsel?
It was a doozy, so thank you. I don't think I've been before this board before. My name is Thomas Carroll. I'm appearing tonight on behalf of the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth. Before you tonight is our application for preliminary and final site plan approval with a couple of minor technical variances. I think they're properly characterized as for what is alternately called a gatehouse or a guardhouse on the property. It's being proposed essentially for a couple of different reasons. One, just to improve the security of the campus, to have guards out there 24/7 with gates that will control access, and we'll be providing the details on that, and also to reduce the cut-through traffic that is presently being experienced through the campus on Campus Drive, a private road. So for those two essential reasons, the sisters are proposing this, I'm going to call it a gatehouse. I have to choose between gatehouse and guardhouse. And our application will basically be presented tonight by Richard Schomer, who I know you're familiar with, who is both a professional engineer and a professional planner. And with that, I would like to propose him for those purposes, ask him to put his qualifications on the record.
And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll swear him in as well as our board professionals, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Hanson. If you'll all raise your right hand. Do all three of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you all.
All yours.
Good, all right. Good evening. Good evening. For the record, Richard Schomer with H2M Associates. And as Mr. Carroll said, I'm licensed as a professional engineer and a professional planner in New Jersey. My licenses are all current. I have appeared before this board in the township many, many times. I can give you more background if you like, but
We've seen you. We're quite familiar.
thank you.
Some of the professionals that come through here, they get to say, well, it's been 3 months since I've seen you, or it's been
Right,
4
that's
months
right.
since I've seen you. Yeah.
It's nice to be.
Proceed.
It's nice to be back in person, though.
Yes.
So it's yes. So thank you. Okay, I have some exhibits. We have the plans that we submitted, but I do have some exhibits, and I did submit them to Sonia previously, so you have these. But let me.
I'm sorry, just 1 second.
Yes.
Mr. Quillen, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry, I forgot to put it down. I'll put it down now.
Just want to, okay, thank you.
Okay. So let me do share and this is the one I'm sharing, right? Okay. Can we, all right, so I can go back. This is our application. I called it guardhouse on the gatehouse.
I stand corrected.
That's all right, either one. Good evening. So as Mr. Carroll pointed out, with the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth are proposing is a new guardhouse to replace an existing guardhouse that is present. So what do we have here? This first exhibit, and again, I did
A1?
A1, sure, and I did submit these to Sonia. She can confirm she has them, but if not, I can certainly send them again.
If you could just give us a short title for it.
Sure. This is an aerial photograph, basically showing the site and what's on the site. So I simply want to kind of orient the board to the site. So the Sisters of Charity campus is a 150-acre campus, and it is partly within Morris Township, so about 50 acres, and that's on the left side, sort of the pictures you see here, is Morris Township, and I can enlarge this a little better if that's helpful. So on the left side, about 50 acres is in Morris Township, and about 100 acres is in the borough of Florham Park. It has access by Convent Road, and Convent Road comes off of Madison Avenue by the Madison Hotel. You come up Convent Road, and you come to Convent Station, the train station, and you cross the train tracks, and you're then into the campus of the Sisters of Charity. Convent Road is actually, that name continues, and Convent Road actually goes all the way through the campus and goes out to Park Avenue. So the main access is at one end of Convent Road or the other. It goes through the entire property, and for many years, the problem has been that Convent Road is used as a cut through for people to get from Madison Avenue over to Park Avenue. Some trucks use it as a cut through because at Punch Bowl Road, there's a train trestle that has low overhead, so they can't get through that way. They don't want to go all the way down to Danforth Road. So there's been an ongoing issue throughout the years with people using this as a cut through. This property is the site of the Sisters of Charity. The main administration building is there. The Mother House is there. St. Elizabeth University is on the campus, and the Academy of St. Elizabeth. So there's concerns with security on the campus and the safety of the residents, safety of students, safety of the public. And it is private land. Convent Road is a private road through the campus. It is not in a right of way. It's not a public roadway. It's a private road. So what we'd like to do is try to control the traffic better. The existing guardhouse simply is not adequate to control the traffic that goes through the property today. So this kind of gives you a sense of where we are on the left side here, right by, as well, left side as we look at the plan, is where the entrance is, and I'll zoom into another plan to show you where that is. The main administration building is bisected by the municipal boundary, so it sits here. There are other structures within the township. The physical plant building is located within the township, so there are a number of other structures on the property for the different uses that I've mentioned, and also number of structures just because of the size of the campus. So if I go to the next plan, this is a rendering of the site plan that we submitted. And if we need to look at any of the individual plans, I do have the full set of site plans here.
So
But-
Exhibit A2 will be the rendering of the site plan, and all they're all coming off the same last revised date of what, if you have it handy?
The plans are unrevised.
Original date.
The original date, if the plans, if you have them there, you have the original date, they're unrevised. Do you need that date, Steve?
That's okay.
Okay. I can flip down through and get it. If you,
9/27/22.
thank you, Paul. So this is, as I say, a focus of the site plan, and I can even enlarge this a little more. There we go. So looking at this now on the left-hand side of the page, you can see the train tracks. Just to the left of that would be off the page, would be Convent Station, the train station. So you enter Convent Road, again, it goes off to the left and comes into the campus. And the existing guardhouse is located here. It's in red. And that's near where the road comes in, and then it divides a little bit. But the existing guardhouse in this location, that will be removed. But in its current location and the way the current setup is, as I said, it's really not adequate. So the plan is to put in this new guardhouse or gatehouse. The building itself would be 14 4" long by 10 feet 4" wide, and that's shown in this sort of orangish color. It would sit in an island in the middle of the driveway. So basically we're taking the existing driveway, we're going to widen it a little bit on each side. The plan is to have two 12-foot wide access driveways coming up to gates. So we would have gates here for control. One lane, just as I'm sure everybody's familiar with going into perhaps a gated community. One lane typically is for those people who are frequent visitors, and they would have a mechanism which would allow the gate to open automatically. For others who are not regular visitors and who don't have a pass, they would come up and they would stop at the guardhouse, and the guard would have to let them in to continue. There will be physical gates, like a knife gate at each of those lanes, so the gates would have to go up and down and would operate to keep people from going through, and to let them through when they can. If you don't have a pass and you can't go through, cars can turn around right at this location. So we've provided a location right at the backside of the gatehouse, so a car can turn around. If, for example, it happened to be a truck would be directed. They would have to actually, there's not enough space here to make room for a truck. So a truck would be directed to make a right-hand turn, past the guardhouse, go into the circulation area in front of the administration building, and would have to come back out to exit the site. There's certainly going to be some learning curve, because I think there are people who do this on a regular basis, and they're going to learn that they really can't continue to do this anymore. So we expect there probably will be some form of a learning curve as that happens. The guardhouse will be manned 24/7, so there will always be a guard here. So it's always manned. In the rare event for some reason they didn't, and fire or emergency vehicles had to get in, there would be a knockbox, or quite frankly, if you had to get through, you can go through the gates. But the plan is, as it is today, that the guardhouse would be manned 24/7, so there's always somebody there. There's a 1-lane exit, again with a gate, so we don't need to be checking people as they go out. So they could simply come up to the gate would open, and then they would be able to leave. You can see the location of this is well into the campus. It's about 350 feet inside of the campus from the area where the train tracks are. There are, if you look at the site today, it's a very nice entrance. It's a very nice driveway. There are some trees on the side. We're planning to leave those to the extent we can. There are 2 trees that do need to come down to allow for this widening. Because of the removal of those 2 trees, we're going to put up 5 replacement trees, and that's consistent with the ordinance. We have a tree removal and a replacement plan, which was submitted as part of the plans. And your ordinance is based on the size of the tree, determines how many trees need to be installed. So we would put in 5 new trees. The sisters in the campus do tree planting on a regular basis, frequently throughout the year. But this would be 5 additional trees to be placed within this area. There are, as you can see on the plan, there are a number of existing pedestrian paths for people to come into and out of the campus that takes them over to the train station. So these pedestrian paths would all remain. We would maintain the existing pedestrian flow. There are, along these paths, there are a number of pole-mounted lights for safety and security. So along these various paths, those pole-mounted lights would stay. We are proposing 2 new pole-mounted lights, one right by the front side of the gatehouse and one on the back side of the gatehouse. So these lights they're designed to match the existing lights that are there, which are about 12 feet high. But these are intended to really light this area so that as somebody is driving up toward the gatehouse, this area is lit so that they can see there's a gatehouse and there's adequate lighting at both ends as you approach it, both as you're entering and both as you're exiting. So there would be lighting in the area of the gatehouse for visibility. Having heard the last application, I'll tell you these lights would be on dusk to dawn. So they are security lights. This is a fully manned a security guardhouse. So these lights would be on dusk to dawn. The guardhouse will be ADA compliant. So there's a doorway at the back to get in and out. So that would be ADA compliant. I know that was a comment that came up in our TCC meeting as a need. So that will be done. What else can I tell you? The location, like I said, is really along the existing driveway. We're simply going to widen it so we can place this guardhouse in the on the center island so that it serves people coming in and people exiting will go past the guardhouse. There are technically a couple of variances that came up when we had our meeting with the TCC, so I can talk about those, Tom, unless there's something else you want me to hit on the site plan.
That would be
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you the question. I mean, I assume this is in the OSGU zone,
I should have mentioned that. Thank you.
and I do assume that the application conforms with the applicable ordinance standards in that zone, with the exception of the 2 technical variances you're going to talk about in a moment. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I should have mentioned we are in the OSGU zone, which doesn't really have a lot of standards, but to the extent that there is a section of the ordinance, section 9536, which regulates accessory structures. And it regulates, there's a section A that regulates accessory structures in residential zones. And then there's a subsection C, which applies to non-residential zones. But then that section refers you back to section A. Says everything in section A, well, that applies too. So to the extent it's a variance, and we think it's somewhat of a technical variance, but we've noticed for it. And to that extent, the relief that's needed is to permit an accessory structure to be closer to the street line, and that would be Convent Road in this place. So to allow an accessory structure to be closer to the street line than the principal building. The principal building probably would be considered the administration building. That's the largest building on campus, or one of the largest at least, one of the most prominent. So if we consider that to be perhaps one of the principal buildings, I think there are probably numerous principal buildings on this campus. But to the extent that any of those are principal buildings, then this is an accessory structure, we would be closer to Convent Road than that administration building. So that would be one part of the relief that's needed. The second part is to permit total aggregate square footage of all accessory structures on the lot to exceed 900 square feet. So we have a 150-acre campus, 50 acres in Morris Township. We have a number of structures. Many of them, I think, are principal. Some could be considered accessory. But given the nature of the campus, we certainly would exceed the 900 square feet if you added up all of the accessory structures. So we would need relief. So those are two parts of that section 95-36 of the ordinance. The accessory structures, I think, are difficult to apply, or the accessory structure part of the ordinance, I think, is difficult to apply to a large OSGU zone tract like this, because there are typically many buildings, as I mentioned. In my opinion, I think really it's hard to apply this standard to this use. So I think the C1 hardship standards would apply, but also I think the C2 flexible C variance standards apply, because this is really a function of promoting health, safety, and welfare, both for the people on the campus and for the public. So I think that purpose of the municipal land use law is certainly advanced by this application. Promoting that falls under the C2 variance, the hardship that I mentioned under the C1. The guardhouse is not going to adversely impact neighbors. We're taking down a guardhouse that is already on the campus, and we're replacing it with this guardhouse. So I don't think it will impact the neighbors. There will be no additional lighting promoted towards the neighbors. All of the screening between us and the nearest neighbor, which would be the townhouse development adjacent to us, so all of that screening would stay. We're going to plant additional trees, as I said, to remove a couple that are being removed. So in my opinion, when we consider the negative criteria with respect to ordinance relief, typically looks at the impacts to neighbors, that is any potential detriment to the public good. That really deals with neighbors. And in terms of intent and purpose of the zone plan and zone ordinance, I don't see any adverse or substantial negative or substantial detriment to that. Again, I think applying these standards to the OSGU zone and large tracts like this gets a little cumbersome, but nonetheless, we've noticed that we do need this relief. For those reasons, I think we comply with the appropriate standards to grant the relief. And I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions from the board.
Yeah, if I could, Rusty, just a couple first, just to conclude. The variance standards you mentioned, that those are from 95-36A of the code, as I understand it, those ordinances?
Yes.
Okay. And those are the accessory structure ordinance standards relating to the residential zones, right?
It is, because under subsection C, which talks about accessory structures in non-residential zones, it says, has some requirements. And then it says, oh, and you go back to section A, which is the residential accessory structures in residential zones. That's subsection A.
Okay. So, I mean, based upon your analysis, is it fair to say it's your opinion that these two variances that you spoke of, this application satisfies both the positive and the negative criteria under the variance statute?
In my opinion, it does.
Okay. And that there's no substantial harm to the public good, the zone plan, or the zoning ordinance?
Correct. That's my opinion.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Lesso.
Sorry, you probably answered the question, but I just want to ask it again so I understand it. So the guard is not going to be staffed 24/7?
It is.
It is.
24.
But if someone's not there, the fire department would have a Knox box to open the gate?
Yes.
Is there any other way that the fire department can open up the gate without having to stop to open up a Knox box? We're not going to drive fire trucks through the gate. Unless the mayor and the town council changes its policy on protecting our equipment. But no, we're not going to drive through the gate.
Okay.
So I,
You know, squelch monitor or something like that for the sirens.
Can you drive around it?
If there's a suggestion for something else, we're happy to hear that. I mean, the plan is it's going to be manned 24/7, but just supposing for some strange reason, we said, well, somebody asked, well, what if nobody's there? You know, so if you have a suggestion that works better for the fire department,
I don't, but I know that that was one of the items the chief had in his report, that we were concerned about that. I don't remember what we did at Honeywell, but I believe there was a way to get into Honeywell without having to get out of the car.
They had the monitors for squelch sirens.
Yeah, siren frequency, that's what we require for houses that want to put gates up out of the driveway, is they have to sequence the frequency of the pickup frequency of their unit to the siren frequency, and it will open the gate.
So is that something the applicant would stipulate as part of a?
yeah, that would be
Approval to do
fine.
that.
And I'm sure that the guard is probably going to be knowing that there's an emergency vehicle coming as well, but that's fine. We would agree to that.
Yeah, I mean, but I've shown up a couple of times where there's no guard because he's tending to the emergency.
Right. Okay.
Ms. Van Order?
Thanks. I just had a question about the other entrance, and I was just curious if it had a guard gate or if it's like
Not yet.
maybe step 2.
Not yet.
Okay. So you
the first
would be reducing the drive through the on that side, which maybe is the more common way that people go through. Is that your reason for starting there? Or
There's less accessibility from the Park Avenue side because one of the entrances there is currently closed. But that is something that we'll be looking at as in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board members?
Do you have any estimates on how many trucks currently cut through?
I don't. No, we don't have a count or anything like that, but we know that it happens. There are trucks that do come to serve the campus, certainly, but there are those that don't. So we want to stop that. And there's a lot of pedestrian vehicles, just normal passenger vehicles that do use it as a cut through. So we really want to curtail all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, I just have one question. I'm familiar with the Convent Station train station, and I realize that I see a lot of traffic cutting across the traction line and across the tracks to get into the college. Looking at the graphic you put up, it appears that the new guardhouse is going to be about 50 or so feet closer to the train tracks.
Closer to the it
To,
will be
to the entrance?
it will be closer to the entrance, but it's, as I mentioned, it'll be still about 350 feet
Right,
into the campus from that area.
from the tracks, which seems like a fairly lengthy distance, about
Yes.
3 football fields. But my question is, has any consideration been given to, let's say, significant events at the college, maybe a graduation, whether or not there's any chance that traffic could back up across the traction line, maybe across the train tracks while they're being processed to get into the college grounds?
Well, so we do have that significant distance into the campus where we've placed the guardhouse. And in addition to that, if there's an event which we need to let people in, the attendant, the guard there will know this. And so if people need to come in, and they would keep the flow going into and through the guardhouse, knowing that they're coming for that particular event.
Okay. Very good.
Mr. Quillen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was surprised to hear that the Sisters of Charity intend to have this guardhouse be staffed, manned 24/7. That's not at all the case for the current guardhouse. I've walked down into the campus. I've driven in there for events of various kinds, and I have not seen anyone in the guardhouse very often at all. So I don't think it's currently staffed. And so this is a big commitment on the part of the property owner to staff the guardhouse 24/7 in order to keep out some trucks. So I'm not sure about the trade-off. This is obviously not really our business, but I would just be a little concerned for the Sisters of Charity that they may want to in the future change their minds and not have the guardhouse staffed all the time. So I don't know whether that's something that we would want to try to permit them to do now in some way, or if you have a suggestion.
Let me just say that we've talked about the cut through traffic. That's part of it, but there's also the general security of the campus, people coming in, making sure that the people are coming in belong on the campus. So the cut through traffic is one component of why the sisters wanted to do this, but there's also the general security on the campus. So that's part of it as well.
Yes, and I'm just trying to be helpful. I mean, to have a perpetual commitment to have someone there 24/7 seems kind of extreme to me.
There is security on the campus 24/7 now. So they currently have security there. Whether or not there's somebody in the booth every minute, I can't say, but they do have security personnel on the campus full time now.
Mr. Chairman?
If we approve this application as it's been made, then one of the conditions of the approval will be that the guardhouse is staffed 24/7. Isn't that correct?
That's the plan. Yes, correct. To have it staffed 24/7. That's part of the application, yes.
Another question that I had was about the architectural design of the guardhouse. I don't know whether you have any testimony to provide there, whether the drawings that you provided to the board were conceptual only, or whether that's what the guardhouse is going to look like. It seemed a little out of character with the rest of the buildings, at least the buildings that are visible from that area.
We did submit plans that show what it would look like. I can bring that plan up if you'd like to see that.
It's a very simple design, almost like a shed. I mean, I'm not saying it's unattractive particularly, but not real attractive either. And I don't have a specific comment. This wouldn't prevent me from voting to approve this application, but I just wanted to know if anyone on the applicant side wanted to comment on the considerations here as to how the building was designed.
It's got regular siding and it's got an asphalt shingle roof. It's a small building. The windows are really functional to provide visibility at the front, visibility on each side, and access on the back side. The design of it we think is reasonably nice. It has a highly pitched roof. It's a small structure, so it's going to be, and we're going to have landscaping in front of it. There's trees on the side of the driveway. So the sisters looked at this, thought that this was an appropriate style and size for the use. It's got does have some accent lighting on the structure itself. The security lighting I already mentioned, but it does have some accent lighting. So the trim on it we think is appropriate. So it's a small structure. It's not intended to draw lots of attention to it. It's not a major structure on the campus. Its function is as a guardhouse, but we thought that an appropriate sort of design like this made sense.
There'll be a heat pump that provides heat and I guess air conditioning for the person or people inside. Is that right?
Is it a heat pump? Okay. Yeah, I'm told, yes, that's correct. It will be heated and air conditioned, yes.
Know where the heat pump will be located?
Pardon?
Do you know where the heat pump would be located?
In the ceiling.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Those were all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other board
Chairman?
members? Mr. Bai?
Yes. How does the size of the new gatehouse compare to the old one? Square footage?
It is bigger than the existing one a little bit. I don't have dimensions on the existing structure.
Okay.
But it's a little bit bigger and it's nicer than the existing one as well.
Well, and ADA compliant, I guess that
Yes.
probably affects it also. The other question is how does the current gatehouse function? I mean, it seems to be completely on the wrong side of the road to really deal with the traffic that you may have. It seems completely non-functional where it is.
That's why we want to replace it.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Professionals? Mr. Phillips, any questions?
No, they've addressed all of the items that were in the TCC report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Mr. Warner?
Same.
Mr. Hanson?
I'm good.
Okay. Any members of the public have questions on this application?
I have one last question.
Yes.
There was a reference in the Environmental Commission report, I don't know if you saw that, to request planting with native Jersey plants.
We do show plantings on the landscape plan. Most plants are not native in New Jersey, unfortunately, but
Well, I
many
will say we
see
have the do not plant list resolution.
We
And
can-
at a minimum, we're asking people not to plant invasives.
Absolutely. We
And
would not
a
plant
next good step is to plant natives.
Yes.
So it may be a condition would be to comply with the do not plant list,
Okay, that would be fine.
which was a resolution that we passed, I believe, last April.
Okay. We can comply with that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members? At this time, I'll open up for comments from the public. Any members of the public have comments on this application? Seeing none, I'll close the comment period. We can deliberate first, or we could do a motion first.
Let's make a motion.
Would you like to make the motion?
I would love to make the motion.
Something tells me you would.
I make a motion, we approve this application with the variance waivers that were sought and with the stipulations that the applicant has provided tonight.
I'll second that motion.
Second by the mayor. On the roll call?
Mr. Quillen,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Alonso,
Yes.
Mr. Durkee,
Yes.
Mr. Flowers,
Yes.
Mr. Bai,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Van Order,
Yes.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
Mr. Benoit,
Yes.
so moved.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
We'll take a 5-minute break. Waiting for the recording sound.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. The new process. So let's return to our meeting. Sonia on the roll call?
He's
there. He's there.
I'm here. Sorry, I couldn't hear what you called out. Sorry, I'm here.
Mr. Bai,
Here.
Mr. Durkee,
Here.
Ms. Van Order,
Here.
Ms. Wilson,
Here.
Mr. Flowers,
Here.
Mr. Barrett,
Here.
Mr. Benoit,
Here.
Mr. Warner,
Here.
Mr. Phillips,
Here.
Mr. Hanson,
Here.
and I'm Tony Santiago here. Did I miss anybody? Mr. Benoit, did I call?
You called me, yes, you did, and I got to stay here. On the third hearing, yes.
Our next application is PB 11-22, Sandy Salt Bikes Restaurant for site plan / variance. This is block 10501, lot 2, 255 Sewell Avenue in the B11 zone. Applicant proposes to renovate the existing restaurant and convert same for use as new restaurant to include outdoor dining.
And Mr. Chairman, I did have
Thank
an
you.
opportunity to review the notice, found the content to be sufficient, found it to be timely served and published, certified mail November 3, published also November 3, both at least 10 days prior to this evening. The board does have jurisdiction to hear and decide the application this evening.
Thank you, Counselor. Before we begin, it's 9:10. We certainly want to give the applicant time to begin testimony. We generally conclude meetings at 10 o'clock. We have one matter to consider before then, so if we could proceed till 9:45, and see where you are in the testimony, and then we'll have to reschedule the balance. I'm sorry about that. These things you just can't,
And we understand.
yeah.
Thank you. Richard Stewart from the law firm of Lasser Hockman on behalf of the applicant Soul Bites Restaurant Group, LLC. As Ms. Santiago indicated, this application involves the applicant's property at 255 Speedwell Avenue. If the board will recall, that's the location of the old Hunan Chinese Room restaurant. The applicant does intend to renovate the property and to open a new restaurant at that location, but does not plan on making any changes to the building floor print, same size. I have with me this evening the project architect and the project engineer and planner. We had planned on having the principal of the applicant here this evening, but unfortunately she came down with a case of COVID. I believe though she is listening by Zoom. So with that being said, I'd like to call now the project architect, who is Ms. Margaret Nuri Mayel.
And Mr. Chairman, I could swear her in along with our board professionals, or if the applicant's counsel wishes, we could swear in other witnesses, even though we may not get to them this evening. I guess not. Okay. Mr. Phillips, Mr. Hanson, please raise your right hands. And the witness, please do the same. Do all three of you swear to God or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you all.
Let's just start with briefly giving the board your educational and professional background in terms of your qualifications to appear this evening as the applicant's architect.
Okay. So my name is Margaret Nuri Mayel. I am a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. In good standing. I have been a licensed architect in New York State for the better of 8 years. I have 16 years professional experience in mixed use, hospitality, and commercial architecture in worldwide and in New York and in New Jersey.
And you've testified before boards such as this and have been qualified as an expert in architecture.
Absolutely. First time at Morris Township, but yes.
I would ask that the board recognize.
I'm sorry, you said you're licensed in New Jersey.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
No
In good
objection.
standing, yes.
And in good standing. Thank you. No objection.
Ms. Nuri Mayel, can you briefly describe for the board what's being proposed here architecturally?
Yes, so this is a full building and site renovation at 255 Speedwell. It is at the intersection of Speedwell and Hanover properties, kind of on the edge of Morris Township. The site is to be fully revitalized. I know the building has been unoccupied for the better part of a year, perhaps two. We are proposing full renovation of the exterior, new materials, new windows, new doors, and a full renovation of the site, including parking, additional vegetation, and signage.
And did you bring any exhibits here this evening that
I
you'd like
did.
to show the board?
So I will go ahead and share my screen. So first, I just want to show you the overall project site, just to get you guys oriented.
And we'll refer to this as Exhibit A1.
Okay.
Sure. I believe this was submitted in connection with the original
Yes,
application, but
yes.
we could mark it.
What we call, yeah, and it looks like an aerial, and it may have a little extra colorization and or some
Yeah.
verbiage there.
Yes, so this is an L-shaped site at the corner of Speedwell Avenue and Hanover. It is a commercial location. There is a gas station that is adjacent, and a dog grooming space is also adjacent. So now I'm going to jump into, for my testimony, I'm going to be presenting the architecture and the design. And then the engineer and planner will go into the specifics of the site. So the proposed restaurant is to be Sandy's Soul Bites, which is kind of a soul food restaurant. As you can see with the existing conditions, the site is quite run down, has not been occupied for almost 2 years. As the building is in various points of decay, as is the parking lot. And as you can see from the image on the lower left, all the parking lines have faded.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, is this the design appendix, July
Yes.
22,
Yes.
2022?
Yes, it's
Okay, which was
similar.
previously submitted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a multi-page exhibit,
Mhm.
previously been submitted, so it doesn't necessarily have to be marked as an exhibit.
Yeah, so I will note that this presentation is a combination of the design appendix and the signage appendix. So this has been reformatted.
Why don't we just call it a A2 then?
Okay.
And that can cover both, and you can just, we'll be able to identify where we are from the descriptions and the pictures.
That's fine.
Okay. So yes, so here is the existing conditions, and as you can see the existing signage along Speedwell Avenue, and an outdoor space in front of the building that was likely used for outdoor dining. So this is the existing site plan. You can see the existing building. All mechanical equipment is located on the roof. And then these are the existing parking stalls that are faded. The existing elevations, you can see there are several windows with awnings, as well as a side entrance with a ramp and stairs. So moving on to our design proposal, as Richard mentioned, we are keeping the existing footprint. And here is a proposed rendering viewed from Speedwell Avenue. You can see the signage. We're proposing to really liven it up and revitalize by adding plantings, outdoor dining, all new awnings, new windows, and also new siding and paint. So I'll just touch on a few site improvements. We are proposing to add as much pervious painting and planning to the parking lot as allowed per parking requirements. We are also proposing to add an outdoor patio surrounded by plantings. And we are proposing to move the existing dumpsters into an enclosed area, an enclosed structure with a gate. And we are also proposing to replace the existing signs. There's a tall sign over here on Hanover Avenue, and then there's a shorter and larger sign along Speedwell Avenue, and we are proposing to replace those in kind. So here's some proposed inspiration, kind of what we were drawing from throughout the design process for the exterior. Adding pops of color and making the space very inviting. So I'll start with the patio. We're proposing approximately 44 seats outside. We have a banquette, and then we have several pieces of furniture, including tables, umbrellas, and chairs that will likely be moved indoors during the winter. And then plantings, which kind of enclose the patio space. We are also proposing to replace the ramp and stairs and railings in kind, and all will be ADA compliant, ADA and code compliant. So here's images of the main elevations. The south elevation, which can be viewed if you're going north along Speedwell Avenue. We're proposing a mural on the south side, and board and batten siding on the exterior with painted stucco. We're also proposing to extend the existing building parapet along Speedwell Avenue to further conceal mechanical equipment on the roof. But we are still within the maximum allowable building height. Here's just a little bit more detail on the materials that will go on the exterior of the building. And then also we have engaged an artist for the mural design as well. The mural will be designed for this building in particular, but here are some examples of her work, so you can get an idea of the design intent. Moving on to signage, as I said, the existing signage is in very poor condition and does need to be replaced. We fully intend to replace it in kind, same location, similar size, similar height. So this is a comparison of the existing sign area and height, and this is the proposed. This particular sign is along Speedwell Avenue, and here is the design of the sign. It's almost going to be like a neon lit sign. And the colors match the proposed colors on the elevation of the building. Here's the other large pole sign. As you can see, it's the existing, we're matching the existing height and area. And also similar design aesthetic to the monumental sign on Speedwell Avenue. So that pretty much concludes the design intent for the building and site. We have put in for 5 variances. Some of them are existing non-conforming conditions, which we are replacing in kind. For the impervious paving, almost all of the site is completely paved. And we are proposing to actually reduce it. Mike will go into more detail about that. Same with parking. We are sticking with the existing non-conforming parking stalls, which are located within the 35-foot front yard setback. And then also the parking stall dimensions. We are requesting a standard size of 9 by 18 in order to fit within the site constraints. And then for signage, when we had our TCC meeting, there was a little bit of back and forth whether or not the mural constituted as building signage. But we wanted to put that out there as a variance regardless. And the mural size is approximately 30% of the south facade area. And it is the only signage on the building. And then the existing non-conforming freestanding signs, we understand that the existing is non-conforming. They are within the setbacks, and they're also one more is provided than required. But we are very considerate of that, which is why we're trying to match the existing as much as we can in terms of size and height. So I will pass this off to Mike.
The planner will present testimony as to why she believes the variances are justified.
Okay.
Anything else, or are we
No,
ready for
that's-
questions?
Should we do questions for this?
Yeah,
witness
yeah.
first? Okay,
Great.
all right. So questions for the architect? Mr. Lesso?
This is not Mr. Lesso. I just wanted to ask, and this may be for the next witness, which is fine, but you said there's an existing non-conforming circumstance related to the parking spots, and I do understand that you're looking to keep the same size that exists now, which is currently non-conforming. Is it also that the number of spots is also non-conforming, or
No,
is
just
that the only
existing
non-conforming
size.
is the size? Okay,
Yes,
that was just a question I had because I thought you were referencing two different things related to parking.
Well, there are two different things. There's the quantity, which is defined in zoning.
That's
based on
what I'm asking about.
Yeah, based on the patron, and then there's the stall size,
Mm.
and they're kind of conflicting because in order to keep the existing number for the restaurant patrons, we would need to keep the existing stall size.
Okay,
And-
so if you
yeah.
keep the existing non-conforming stall size, you'll have the conforming
Yes,
number.
yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thanks. Mr. Lesso.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want you to repeat again the comment you made about the parapet.
Oh, sure.
But that went over my head fast.
Oh,
And I
sorry.
don't see a plan here of what the elevation looks like, so I assume there's HVAC units on the roof and the parapet's
Yes.
being raised to cover them, screen them?
Yes, so you can see like along the front, this is the existing height of the parapet, and you can see the mechanical if you stand across the street. So we're proposing to raise it just along Speedwell Avenue right here.
And what material is that going to be?
It's going to be a painted stucco.
Painted stucco, okay.
Mhm.
The other question I had for you is you had indicated that there's an existing sign. You're going to be using the same existing posts, but you're putting new faces on either side.
We're doing new posts too.
Okay.
They're
But the posts are in the same spot.
yes,
Okay. And then there's a mural on the side that actually says Sandy's.
yes.
And we may or may not believe that that's a sign or a mural, but you're variance for it either way.
Mhm. Yes,
Very
correct.
good. Okay, I'm
You
good.
got it.
Thank you. It's a good testimony. Just some of it went over my head quickly. Apologize.
No, I'm trying to go fast because it's late. my time constraints.
Any other board members? Ms. Wilson?
Just on that mural, it's on the building, right?
Correct. It is painted on the building.
And you said the design will be for this building.
Yes.
What kind of considerations can you elaborate on? Like, how do they just decide what would fit here?
Well, I think this particular artist, it fit with Sandy's brand. It's very lively, very colorful, very welcoming, very southern. It incorporates a lot of the colors of the interior as well. And it's kind of to be the first thing you see when you enter the site if you're coming off a speedwell. So it's, yeah, it's almost like more visible than the other signage on the
Yeah.
side.
How big is it?
Well, it's about 15 feet tall.
Okay, that's all.
And it is painted, so it can be, you know, changed later, but yeah, that's the intent.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Barrett?
Hi, I have just a quick follow-up on the mural question. So the way I'm envisioning where the mural will be, you said it's on the Speedwell side.
Yes.
And so literally across the street, I believe you have St. Virgil and I think Red Oak School.
Yes.
Nothing else, I don't believe. We'll, and I don't know that there is a requirement to do this, but has there been any thought about providing maybe the board or the neighbors an opportunity to see what the mural would look like?
Yeah,
Before it's put on?
absolutely. Yeah.
Both the board as well as the neighbors?
I mean, whatever's decided in this meeting, we would be happy to submit the final design
Okay,
for your review.
thank you.
Mr. Bud?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, again, about the mural, it doesn't face Speedwell. It actually.
No.
Right, okay, right. It's seen from Speedwell Avenue
Yes,
if you're traveling north. It's
Mhm.
on that, faces the parking lot and the blank wall of the building next to it, whatever it is,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
recall.
the
But
dog
could be
grooming,
seen from
yeah.
across the street.
Mhm.
The other is, you know, the concepts and the other work from this artist, it doesn't contain lettering. It is
No,
just an art piece. If you
Yeah,
will.
and
Okay.
we have, I mean, we're showing Sandy's logo on here, but
That's the
as-
Sandy's logo?
Yeah, you can see
Okay.
it. It's a little, it's light.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess I can see that embedded in there now. I didn't
couldn't
see
see
that
it.
before, but
No.
yeah.
Yeah, very subtle.
Okay. I did have one more question on the second sign, the one on the Hanover Avenue entrance.
Mhm.
Does it really need to be that tall? I drove by there again and find it almost, it looks too tall. I mean, it's like you can't see it because it's so high above the.
Well, I think it's intended to be tall enough so you can see it from both directions since you
Over
because
the
of
gas
that.
station. Okay, I was looking at it from
yeah.
one side and it almost, but from the other side, I guess that's probably true. I didn't
Yeah.
notice it from there. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other board members? Mr. Quillen?
Thank you. I have a question about the mural. It looks taller than the building. Does it extend up above the? I guess there's no parapet on that side, but it extends up above the.
No, this is the existing height of the building. We're not extending the parapet in this area. I can show you the
Building's a little
image.
higher there on that end of the building is a little higher than the rest of the building.
So you can kind of see in the photo on the lower right, it would
Okay,
be
that black
right.
wall with the sign on it. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this parapet along Speedwell is actually much shorter. It kind of aligns. It aligns with this parapet here. So we're proposing that it's actually raised to match the height of this. So it's only going up about 1.5 feet along Speedwell. So this part will be taller. Mhm. But this portion will stay the same height. That's not going to be changed. That's about 15.5 feet above grade.
Why is the building taller in that one particular spot?
That is a very good question. We believe, based on the construction, that it was an addition to the existing structure at one point, this whole side.
Inside, is it taller? Is the ceiling higher?
Yes, it is. And there is no basement beneath it. It's a crawl space. That's why we believe it was an addition.
Whereas the rest of the building has a basement underneath it?
Yes.
Okay. And then on the parking, there'll be additional testimony about the parking, is that right? I am curious about the capacity of the restaurant with and without the outdoor seating and how that compares to the parking that you're proposing and the parking that's required by ordinance. But is that another witness, not rather than you?
Yes.
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 Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Good. That's it for me then. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I don't know. I love the mural. I love the colors. I think the concept is great. So, and I guess you're getting rid of all of that fake stone facades, and you're going to
Yes, we are.
clean all that up.
Yeah, we are cleaning that up. The stucco is in very poor condition. All the siding is not good. So we're taking all that off and replacing it with siding, board and batten siding.
And the mural will be on
Stucco,
all
painted
on
on
stucco.
Mm-hmm.
We are like a rough.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll have a little texture.
All right. And then who do we talk to regarding lighting?
That'll be in
Okay.
next witness.
So that'll be the next witness.
Site lighting, yes.
And then these planters, these are the existing planters? We're putting in new?
We're putting in new planters. Similar, a little bit more vegetation than what's currently there. Okay. But they'll be standalone planters. They'll be able to be moved. And then we are proposing a built-in banquette for seating.
But you haven't decided on the furniture yet?
No, we have. I'll go back to the image right here.
Look like you had choices. Okay.
Yeah, this isn't, we're doing some different seating configurations, but this is basically what we're going for.
Okay, you're going for that?
So a mix of bistro seating, banquette seating, and tables, larger tables.
So I have a question for Mr. Phillips, because I learned something in Atlantic City last week. I think I did. This is why I need to ask you the question. There was a presentation or session on outdoor, it was basically outdoor dining, even though it was called something else. And there was an executive order signed by the governor and just recently extended to provide for outdoor dining. And I imagine that this is covered by that executive order. So I don't know whether there's anything in that executive order that we need to be aware of that needs to apply to this, or that we need to be aware of. Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. Steve?
I believe the order that you're referring to extended outdoor dining one more year beyond the end of this year, if I'm not mistaken.
It did.
And I don't believe there are any specific requirements that would impact this board's decision-making process over this application. And I believe the applicant would still need, at least as a formality, even during the extension of the executive order, to get a permit from the township with respect to outdoor dining. Right.
Okay, so then it sounds like maybe.
I think that's what I think I answered the
It could
questions
very
you were
well
about
be,
to
yeah.
ask.
Yeah, it just allowed it, but maybe at some point the township will, or this board will have to come up with some sort of design standards or considerations for what outdoor dining might look like or what we should allow and stuff. I mean, this looks great to me, so I don't know whether.
Well, you have jurisdiction, obviously, over the site plan. And, the site plan has to be consistent with sound planning and public health and safety. So to the extent that they're proposing outdoor dining, you have some say in the specifics of that outdoor dining.
Okay.
Certainly safety, I know there's bollards.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet for safety and other things. So yeah, you're not, I didn't mean to suggest the board was divested of jurisdiction. What I meant to say, if I wasn't clear, was that I don't believe there's any actual preemption of your decision-making process as a board with respect to the application.
Okay, that was
Just
really
that
my
it's allowed.
question, and, okay. All right, thank you. Go right ahead.
Turn on. Again, this is for Mr. Phillips, possibly Mr. Hanson. I'm just confused about the outdoor dining. I'm a big fan of outdoor dining. I think it's a great idea. I think this really, compared to what is sitting there right now, I look at this picture and it's lovely. Outdoor dining, I think, is very comfortable for people. Gives a lot more opportunities for people who don't want to be indoors. After this pandemic, we've really experienced that in a new way. I was confused as to why the one other application we had there was not the ability to give them outdoor dining, and I'm talking about the one on Madison Avenue. So what's the difference here? Like, how does that differ, just from trying to figure that out?
With that application, because that was the Dunkin' Donuts
Yeah.
application, and it had to do with purchasing the food and then eating it on the premises. And here you basically have, as I understand it,
So it's wait staff. Wait staff is the
it
difference.
served, yeah.
Okay.
Which is a distinction. And
Okay.
other than that, our ordinance is, Dave, correct me, it's pretty silent on outdoor dining, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's
Thank you
not-
for that
it's not
clarification.
expressly permitted, but it's not prohibited. And I would take the position that it's allowed, subject to any of the particulars on the site plan that, the board might be willing to impose as conditions and/or the applicant would agree to.
Okay, that was helpful. Thank you.
One of the things that they said, which if I heard correctly, was that the DOT does not allow outdoor dining within 50 feet of its right-of-way. And Route 24 is a state highway.
Speed wants to stay in the state. They have-
That's Route 202.
Okay, so I don't know. I mean,
State. Well, they would be subject to DOT approval.
I don't know. I shouldn't have said anything. Okay. I just have one other architectural question. The rear of the building,
Yes,
is that going to be spruced up as well?
absolutely. All
Okay.
facades. Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, if I may on that, I don't recall seeing that.
It was
facade.
not in the presentation, but it was in the drawing set. I can pull up what was submitted.
That's the purpose. Oftentimes, if something's missing, it's the rear elevation.
Oh, real quick on the, to follow up with the outdoor dining, there is outdoor dining at Tiff's Restaurant, which I believe is
Next door.
down the street. So here are the technical drawings for the elevations you saw. And then here they are for the other sides. This side faces Hanover and the gas station. And this is the east elevation in the back. So we are replacing with batten board siding and stucco as well. So the same conditions wrap completely around the building.
Okay.
But no mural on.
No, no.
Because we recently adopted design standards, architectural design standards for new construction, which talks about wrapping up the concept all around the building.
Yes, which is
So,
exactly what we're doing. Yes.
I have no more questions. Professionals?
Just
Paul?
clarification, the freestanding signs, as I understand it, there are new posts and a new sign face, which is a slightly different shape than what exists
Yeah,
today. So you're not just simply refacing the existing signs.
No, we
I just want
can't.
to be clear because if you were refacing the existing signs, you would have been, you correct me if I'm wrong, grandfathered to reuse those signs.
Yeah.
These are completely new signs. So the extent that you don't comply with the height, area, and setback or whatever else, you're actually applying for a variance. I just want to be
Yes.
clear,
So
notwithstanding the non-conforming status. They are new signs.
yes, they are. I mean, unfortunately, we in an ideal world, we would want to just repair the exit, but as you can see for this image, they are like irreparable.
I just wanted to be, that
Yeah,
the board is
yeah.
clear and that you're clear that you need variance relief.
Yes.
That's all I had this witness.
Mr. Mr. Warner?
As I recall, the square footage is the same. It's a slightly different shape, but the square footage is
Yeah,
fine. Is that the same?
we're adding chamfer. Actually, the one on Speedwell Avenue is slightly smaller. Yeah, but the one on Hanover, the tall one, is exactly the same size. We're just kind of rounding the corners.
Thank you.
The extent that you, and I can't recall, but do you still require sign area variance for the freestanding sign?
No,
You don't?
it's just the location of them and the quantity. I believe there's only one required per site, and so we're asking for two, and they are within the front yard setbacks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, that was the,
Mr. Warner, any questions?
nothing.
Mr. Hanson?
No.
Okay, so I'll entertain any questions from the public on this witness. Seeing none, comments go later. So why don't we adjourn for,
We have the site plan too. Do we want to,
What do you mean?
for the
Civil
engineers?
engineer, next witness.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
it's the next witness. So.
Okay, yeah.
right,
Um, So when is the next hearing?
that's a Ms. Santiago question.
December 5.
Isn't it the 5th?
Yeah, I already heard that. There's one other thing. I think.
About December 5th.
And if I recall correctly, Sonia, was there one other item?
Yes.
The,
Is it Monday?
December 5th, yeah. Is that Monday?
That works. Yeah.
all three other witnesses here.
It's the engineer and the planner are saying.
Same.
One of the witnesses.
Oh, it's. So if I understand correctly, the applicant is carrying this matter without further notice to Monday, December 5th at 7 PM at this same location, the municipal building. And if applicant's counsel will forward to me an extension of time to act through, if you don't mind, the end of the month of December,
Mhm.
which I guess would take us to the end of 2022. That would be helpful.
Is there another matter on that day?
Yes.
Is it a large matter or will we be heard first?
The other matter,
What's the other matter?
Springbrook Country Club.
Parking lot?
Yes. Parking lot
What-
or something else.
Paddleball,
The paddle hut.
yeah, the paddle hut.
The chair board's discretion as to the order. It's not unusual to give a case that was previously started and that it was scheduled ahead of another case, the opportunity to go first, but it's not mandatory.
Do we have to decide right now?
The board doesn't have to do anything. I was just pointing that out in light of the inquiry by applicant's counsel. And the answer could be to be determined.
I think we ought to give deference to the applicant.
That's already started.
First one, so they probably would have had an extra half hour.
Yeah, I would lean toward
We really
allowing you
appreciate
to
that. Thank you.
finish your, okay, so we'll do that.
Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks. Okay, so we have one more item on the agenda. Okay. I don't know whether Paul or,
I'll take a crack at it.
okay. So this, all right. please.
So essentially, there is a ordinance introduced by the Township Committee on referral to this planning board that would basically effectively rezone property from what is now OSGU zone, so that a portion of that would become an RA15 zone. And your charge this evening is to determine whether or not this proposed zoning is consistent or not consistent with the master plan, and I'll get to that. But I thought I would provide some context as to what this is about, which I would think, even though it's not the board's charge this evening, but some context of how this evolved. And then I'll get to master plan consistency. So the property in question right now is block 5401 lot 2. It consists of about 5.5 acres. It's located entirely within the OSGU zone. It's along Mount Kimball Avenue, basically across from Old Harder Road. It was the subject of a D use variance application before the zoning board for the development of, I think it was 11 townhouses, as I recall. And that application was denied by the zoning board. In fact, the vote was 4-3 in favor, but as you're probably well aware, you need 5 affirmative votes for a D variance. So
Constitutes a statutory denial, as
Yeah.
they say.
So the applicant filed a suit in Superior Court, essentially challenging that denial. And since that time, there've been, I think, some fairly extensive negotiations, and ultimately an agreement was reached between the property owner and the township to rezone the property. And that agreement essentially includes a provision whereby a portion of the lands, about 2.6 acres of the 5.5, would be rezoned from OSGU to RA15. And upon those RA15 lands, the landowner would be permitted to build 4 single-family homes and would also build a new roadway to serve those homes, which would then be dedicated to the township. And by the way, just so that you're aware, the RA15 zoning adjoins this property on several sides as it is, which was sort of the logic behind going to RA15. Additionally, with regard to the remaining OSGU zone lands, the property owner would convey those to the township, and the township would actually purchase. It's not a straight conveyance without any compensation. And the owner developer would also construct a number of parking spaces on those lands, which would be available to the public. The intent essentially being that the township would construct a trailhead on those lands, and they're directly contiguous to the Jockey Hollow Top Preserve that is part of lands that are currently owned by the township. That's sort of the logic behind the agreement per se. So just so that you have a context of what this is about. With regard to master plan.
Before you go any further, can I add something on the context? Because I'm also on the Board of Adjustment.
Right.
And there were actually 2 votes
Correct.
on the original application. One was for the 11 units.
Correct.
And when that was denied, they came back as part of the settlement with a proposal for 4 units. And then that was the 4-3 vote. I'm not sure the first one was 4-3, though. I don't remember exactly. I thought whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Whatever it was, the board voted down.
Yeah, and the second one
4.
was after the litigation was filed.
Correct, was part of the settlement.
Yeah.
Would have been a Whispering Woods hearing, which is the post-settlement application and hearing before the Board of Adjustment.
Right.
To determine whether the settlement.
So they came in with 4 units rather than the 11. And the Board of Adjustment denied that request as well.
Correct.
So then that's where we stand.
Correct.
As Paul pointed out, that's all historical
Correct.
But the most important aspect, for now at least, is that the township entered into an agreement that proposes the rezoning. The ordinance has been introduced, I believe, unanimously last governing body meeting. And so our charge, as I know Paul's about to get to, is that narrow charge that most, if not all of us, are aware of, which is one question: is the proposed ordinance consistent with the master plan or not?
So the bottom line is it's not, but I'm also going to provide some context on that as well. So going all the way back to the last comprehensive master plan that was done in the township, which, as you know, is 1994, there have been several reexaminations. The land use element had designated this property as RH5. And at the time, RH5 was an inclusionary housing zone, and it was intended to help the township satisfy what was then its prior round affordable housing obligation. It was also zoned RH5 until 2006. So as it turned out, when the township ultimately obtained substantive certification from COA for that prior round obligation, this site was no longer needed. Okay, it was originally going to be an inclusion. It was no longer needed. You met your fair share number. So ultimately what happened was the township prepared a new housing element and fair share plan. And ultimately the property was rezoned in 2006. Although we cannot find any evidence that, other than the housing element reference, that the land use element changed the designation from RH5. So it may still be RH5 as we sit here in the land use element. But notwithstanding that, even if that was changed to OSGU, this split zoning basically is clearly inconsistent with the master plan, right? It's part of what the township decided to do as a matter of policy to settle litigation. That's what's the basis of the ordinance, right? Which is up for a public hearing and second reading, I guess, next month, if I'm not mistaken. Your job is to determine consistency or not consistency, and it's clearly not consistent with the master plan designation. I mean, I'm happy to answer any questions on that. Just one other point of information, which I think is important. Under the MLUL, the township committee can still adopt zoning that's inconsistent with the master plan, provided a majority of the full authorized membership, so that would be 3 of the 5 township committee members, basically voted to do so. And they also have to state reasons as to why they are doing this inconsistent with the master plan. And those reasons have to be set forth in a resolution, and also, I believe, in the recorded minutes, if I'm not mistaken, out of the statute. So that's basically gives you some framework. But again, your charge is it consistent? And again, there was never, any land use amendment which you authorized, adopted, which was proposed to split this between OSGU and RA15, because this is basically an outgrowth of the settlement agreement. So I know that was long and convoluted, but I felt it appropriate that the board had some context of what's happening here. But again, consistency or inconsistency is your charge.
Yeah, that's important. Any questions, board members?
Sure.
Thank you. So, can you repeat what you said about it may still be RH5 in the land element? I didn't understand that.
So there were a number of properties that were RH5, right? Not just this property, that were intended to satisfy what was then going to be the prior round obligation. Okay. And ultimately, those properties were no longer needed. We have evidence that some of those other properties, including some on Mount Kemble, just down the street, were not only rezoned to OSGU, but there's in the land use reexamination report, they basically sanctioned that this is a change to the land use element. We could find nothing similar with regard to this particular site. It's long before my time. I have no understanding as to why that did or didn't happen. But I mean, the bottom line is this site was rezoned, but it appears that the land use designation was never changed from RH5.
Wow. So RH5 still exists.
Only as the land use designation in the land use element. Now, the housing element clearly said the site's no longer needed, okay? And ultimately, it was rezoned. So no one can come in and attempt to develop it for RH5 because it's OSGU now.
But what I'm saying is the zone RH5 still exists. We still have RH5
There
properties.
are, I believe, Kathy, there are two properties, other properties, not on Mount Kimball, that may still be zoned RH5, two others. And it would be my advice to the governing body planning board to rezone those.
Yes, because they are, what did you call it, inclusionary zone?
They were inclusionary housing zones.
Right, which was high density.
And I have no, again, long before my time, I have no idea why two, basically were changed in terms of the zoning and others were not. I just, it is what it is. But
Well, just
I
to-
would recommend that be cleaned up.
Yes, I agree. Just while we're on this, so this was a private property and somehow it was zoned RH5. Do you have any insight into how does that happen? Is that something COA does or the governing body, or who imposed the RH5 zone
Again,
on?
it goes long before my time, but the township would have had to basically change the zoning. And I'm just going to speculate because I wasn't there. I wasn't your planner. I didn't do your prior housing plan. I did the current housing plan. Is that at some point that these properties were rezoned to satisfy whatever the COA number was at the time, and then somehow or another, in negotiations with COA, right, it was determined that either the number changed or you found other sites to satisfy that number, and these sites were no longer needed. And that's pretty clear from the record on the rezonings of the other RH5 sites, including the two others on Mount Kimball that went to OSGU. That's pretty clear, but we simply can't find a record with regard to this particular site in the land use element, although there's clear record that it was rezoned to OSGU, which to me is the most critical thing.
Right, and that was the 2006
2006
ordinance where the township committee at that time specifically rezoned this property from RH5 to OSGU.
That's correct.
Okay.
So you're saying it's clearly it's been rezoned OSGU.
Yes.
And the inconsistency would appear to be the fact that now we're doing split zoning.
Correct.
Of what? Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The split zone.
The split
is
zone,
inconsistent with the
splitting
land
that
use
one
element. It's
property is
absolutely
now
correct, Mr.
OSGU
Biden.
into RA15 and OSGU.
So that is what makes it inconsistent, the split on the property?
Well, what makes it inconsistent is there was never a planning board action in terms of a land use plan amendment like we've done with other properties that basically would have sanctioned this agreement, splitting the property between OSGU and RA15. It's not consistent with the land use element.
Wow.
Mr. Leto?
I'm a little confused.
I'll do my best to unconfuse you, Joe.
I apologize. I'm trying to swallow all this. So we have to decide whether it's consistent with the master plan or not consistent.
Correct.
That's the question.
That's all
on the
you
table.
need to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've told us it's not.
Correct.
Can you repeat why it's not?
Yes. Because the proposed rezoning, right, which would split the property between OSGU and RA15 is not consistent with the current land use plan element of the master plan, which designates it for something else. It's as simple as that.
And if I may, neither of those two, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But this is the right thing to do, and there's a mechanism to do it
Yeah.
whereby the committee will, with a supermajority, approve this resolution with all of the reasons articulated as to why this unusual decision of approving a zoning change that is not consistent with the master plan is being undertaken. And so even though we can't say that it's consistent with the master plan because it's not, we can support it, and I do. And I'm not sure if you need us to say we do or not. I'm not really sure what you're asking of us.
I could weigh in on.
Go ahead, and then if I
Feel free
have
to
something to
disagree.
add, no, I won't disagree, but yeah.
But the narrow scope is indeed, whether it's consistent or not, you heard the advice and why. There is sufficient language in the MLUL provision requiring our board to take this referral and respond back to the governing body with respect to master plan consistency, and it would afford the board the opportunity to at least weigh in on as you said, if you think it's a good thing, but policy is simply from the governing body. So, are you precluded from saying why you might think it notwithstanding the inconsistency? It's recommended. No, you're not precluded from saying that.
And I would agree with that.
As an individual,
Well, no, as a board.
well, as a board. So we could come up with a position as a board, as to whether I'm not sure we would do that,
It's an
but
ordinance, so
Doesn't matter.
there's language that says and matters relating thereto, I think, or something
Yeah.
along those lines at the end of the.
But you're not required to.
Not
Right.
required
Basically,
to.
the charge is it consistent or not? And it's very clear that it's not consistent.
okay.
It is the charge of the planning board to determine consistent, inconsistent.
Correct.
I will just add that my personal opinion is that there's a lot to this. And as a planning board member, I would be, I would not be inclined to weigh in on the policy aspect of this because in my opinion, there's a lot of other information that's not coming before this board. So, and that's not this board's charge.
Even if you did, would it carry weight? No, so why?
I mean, I would disagree.
Should we just state that it's inconsistent, which is what we know? Is that what you're looking for?
We're supposed to vote on
The
this?
board can limit it to that. The board, I wouldn't say that the planning board's recommendation would not carry, beyond that, I would not say that it would carry no weight. I think the governing body, ultimately, the magnitude of weight it carries, but.
One other question about consistency. You said it's not consistent with the current land use element, right?
Yes.
Okay, so like in the ordinance, that 2006 ordinance, it references the master plan, and that goes back all the way to 2000. So that's not part of the consistency measure at all? Like what's on the book right now is that 2006.
Ordinance was a governing body action.
Okay, similar to what they're doing now.
And the planning board would have had to either by a separate amendment or as part of a master plan reexamination. And I don't want to complicate this, but the other two rezonings that I mentioned on Mount Kemble that went from RH5 to OSGU, they were sanctioned by the planning board in the 2000 reexamination report. For whatever reason, in the 2007 report, they did not sanction the 2006 rezonings. I have no idea. I wasn't here. I don't know the whole history. So it is what it is. And as we read it here, it's inconsistent, clearly. And that's the charge.
George, did you want to weigh in at all?
Well, I wanted to ask a question of Mr. Phillips. And it's related to what was just discussed. And that is, I tried to learn some things at Atlantic City too. I'm not sure how much I learned there, but one of the things that I was told at one of the sessions there at the League of Municipalities was that when a planning board adopts a reexamination report, it doesn't change the master plan. But maybe that's an oversimplification, because I guess, Mr. Phillips, what you're saying is that in a reexamination report, the planning board can explicitly say, we are making an amendment to a particular element of the master plan. And that has been done in the past by this planning board, but it was not done in this particular case.
That's correct. And as you're aware, Mr. Quillen, in the reexamination report, there's a section on recommendations of changes to the master plan and development regulations. And that's what was done back in the 2000 reexamination, where they acknowledged the rezoning of those other two parcels on Mount Kimball and basically said this should be reflected in a change of the land use element for these parcels as well. They should go from RH5 to OSGU. Again, I have no idea why this was never done for this particular property. I can't answer that.
Okay, and then once the planning board adopted that reexamination report, that constituted a change to the master plan from the point of view of, at least with respect to that particular recommendation about the categorization of that, of the zoning of those properties.
Yes.
Okay. So it just sounds like an oversight with respect to this property, that they're just a
Again,
just a
I wish I
mistake.
could speak more to it, Mr. Quillen, but I wasn't involved in any of those documents. They were before my time.
All right, well, I guess
So
agree.
without
I was just going to say, I think I agree that it's sufficient for us to just say our finding is that the ordinance that was introduced is not consistent with the master plan, and leave it at that. But we're expressing, some of us are expressing support for the ordinance nevertheless. I guess while I have the floor for a little while, I'll also say I wanted to make a comment about the survey, which I had trouble reading. I don't know if anyone else had that same trouble, but it looks like the remaining OSGU segment it's got like two disconnected pieces to it. Is that right? I don't know, Mr. Hanson or anyone else, can you comment on that?
Yes, it's currently disconnected because I was told not to include the roadway in the designation because the road doesn't exist yet. And it's just going to be part of the land that is to be developed at some point and then transferred over to the township. So yes, you have two OSGU zones that will be connected once a roadway is done after the approval is granted.
So the piece, that little skinny piece that comes up from Mount Campbell Road, Mount Campbell Avenue, going up the hill, is going to connect with a much larger OSGU segment up above, even though it doesn't meet that other segment.
Yeah, the T-shaped piece that's going to be created as part of the future subdivision for this lot is going to be absorbed into the OSGU zone that currently exists above this property and on adjacent properties. There's a small OSGU sliver that fronts along Mount Kimball that will be connected by the right-of-way to the OSGU zone in the back, and that'll have the parking for the trailhead.
Have other like higher resolution diagrams that show what's intended here, because maybe if I were a member of the Board of Adjustment, I would understand what's going on here, but I can't figure it out from this diagram. I'm concerned that, in the future, people are going to have trouble knowing whether some particular square foot of land somewhere is in one zone or another. I don't know how a surveyor will operate.
I can say the Board of Adjustment got much better drawings, so they'll be around at some point.
Okay. I think that's enough then for just me to just register that comment. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or
I have a question, another question. I'm not sure if this is appropriate given the subject. Our charge is to decide yes or no, is this consistent with the master plan? But we are talking about the zoning and splitting the zoning. Can you just comment briefly on precedent? I've heard that brought up as a concern. Are we setting a precedent? Like if we do this for this property, that we only focus on one property and what we do here has no bearing on any other property?
So I'll go and I don't think you're establishing any precedent. Each kind of matter, has its own particular fact pattern. And here the governing body has come to an agreement with the property owner, and presumably when they, if they vote to approve, they'll state reasons as to why they think this is a good zoning. But again, I don't think I would not be worried about any particular precedent. And again, understand that, there was litigation that was still pending, still on the table at the time the governing body decided to basically approve the settlement agreement and move forward with this rezoning. I mean, if you have anything to add to that, but.
No, I don't. Everything you said is accurate from a legal perspective.
And so when it goes to the governing body, because I've never seen a situation where something is inconsistent. And what you're saying is that the governing body then has to articulate reasons why they're approving an ordinance, a zoning change that is inconsistent with the
Correct.
master plan.
Correct. That's correct. And by the way, it probably hasn't happened a lot in this township. Certainly since I've been here, it hasn't happened a lot, but it does happen more frequently than you might think.
Mhm. This is the only second case I've ever
Yeah.
seen.
So,
Right.
Mr. Chairman, would
Yes,
it
sir.
be appropriate to make a motion that we agree that this is inconsistent with the master plan so that we can go home tonight?
I believe so. Is there a specific language we should be using? Do you want to?
You just hit it.
Okay.
If that is all the board wishes to do and nothing further, then that meets the charge. And the motion is
So
to
So
I'll
the
make that
ordinance,
motion.
the ordinance as prepared,
find the
we
ordinance
determined to be
as
inconsistent, as drafted,
inconsistent
is
with
inconsistent with the master plan.
Does this process involve the public?
It is not a public hearing under the MLUL, specifically because the public hearing aspect of the process, as you know, is on second read before the township committee. That is when the township committee has a public hearing on the ordinance adoption itself. Whether or not it's master plan consistency, in fact, the Cox book, which we refer to as the treatise.
Yes.
He was not technically a professor, not a judge, but but generally recognized as the treatise. Specifically says that the planning board is not obliged to hold what would amount to be a public hearing and considering an ordinance referred to it by the governing body. Clearly, the statute does not require such a hearing, nor does it require that the matter be open to public comment. Of course, must be done at an open public meeting like everything we do as a planning board, but it is not a public hearing. That comes on second read before the governing body, presumably in December.
So let's get a second.
I second Mr. Wilson.
Motion by Mr. Lesso, second by Ms. Van Worder on the roll call. So a yes means it's inconsistent with the master plan.
Correct.
Moved by Mr. Alessa,
Yes.
second.
Ms. Van
I
Worder.
second.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask a quick question in terms of process? I mean, I'm basing my vote on the advice of the professionals. Obviously, I have no independent knowledge of the master plan or
That's what we all do.
nor have I studied it. So,
That's why we have them.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, Mr. Alessa,
Yes.
Ms. Van Order,
Yes.
Mr. Flowers,
Yes.
Mr. Dorsey.
Yes.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
Mr. Vine,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Quillen,
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Benoit.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. At this point in time, I'll open up the floor for any comments from members of the public, unrelated to the hearing, unrelated to anything we've done this evening.
They,
See,
they can't comment on anything we've talked about?
I guess they can comment on, they can't comment on the hearings. I guess they could comment on this vote, right? Anyway, are there any members of the public who'd like to comment on it? Seeing none? Close. Oh, I thought you were getting ready to leave.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Goldberg.
This action was already taken by the planning board. It's not a hearing, it's not a pending application. So it is not inappropriate.
Right.
Comment on the
Right.
determination that was already made.
Okay.
If that is the desire of this member of the public.
Mr. Goldberg.
Lee Goldberg, 10 Arrowhead Road. Thank you for clarifying what is eligible to be commented upon. So thank you. I heard a number of people learned things in Atlantic City last week. I believe I learned in, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Warner, Mr. Phillips, in the Open Public Meetings Act session that I attended, although the board tonight is not required to have public commentary as part of the deliberations on the master plan reexamination, would it be within their purview, should they decide as a board to open it up to public commentary and questions if they chose to do so? Would that be allowable, or it's not, just for future reference? I'm not talking about for tonight, but just in general, does the board have the power to sort of, even though it's not required, to deliberate amongst themselves and say, you know what, there are a couple of people, members here from the public, maybe they would like to talk about it, so let's open it up for public commentary or question?
If the question is, in my legal opinion, is a planning board prohibited from opening a master plan consistency review up to public question and comment? The answer is no. I would opine that legally a planning board is not prohibited from doing it, but I will clearly state that it is within the discretion, not only within the discretion of the planning board, but also it is recognized, as I stated, from the Cox book and case law, that it is not a public hearing. I don't think necessarily any board would ever be prohibited from allowing public question and comment for anything. But the question always is it a public hearing and is it required? Or is it not a public hearing and is it not required? And with a master plan consistency review, it is very clear it is not a public hearing and it is not required.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Appreciate it. I'm just going to make just a few comments on the decision that was just rendered about the master plan inconsistency. Just from my vantage point as a member of the zoning board, as a member of the public, to hear Mr. Phillips tonight discuss that the litigation was pending, that the applicant did file a lawsuit on this. I believe he did file a lawsuit. That is accurate. My understanding is that he withdrew that appeal about a year ago. So just to clarify from my vantage point and my understanding, there was no sort of pending litigation that I'm aware of that's filed in court that's sort of hanging over all of this. I believe that application or that appeal was pulled about a year ago. So there was nothing sort of imminent from, in the court, so to speak, is my understanding. That could be inaccurate, but we can talk more about that on the 21st. I do recall, I believe in the last master plan reexamination, they actually called out this Mount Campbell corridor because it was such a attractive interest. And I believe there was sort of overtures that there would be a study done of that. But just curious, did either a previous planning board or this planning board ever undertake a study of all the developable land between Morristown and the Harding border? Is that something, because I believe the master plan did sort of suggest that, and was wondering if that was ever done.
Can I make a comment on that? It's funny because picking up on Atlantic City, I did just go back and look at our master plan, and the topic was recommendations that were made but not acted on. And one of the recommendations in our most recent 2017
17.
master plan was to take a look at that rezoning on Mount Kimball, where the older homes were, down by kind of where my recollection is it was where the bargain base or the bargain house. Yeah, down there. It was on page 62. I remember the number.
Yeah, there are some references in the recommendation section of the 2017 reexamination to basically kind of study existing land use and development trends and property conditions on sections of Mount Kimball Avenue. I mean, it didn't get into the weeds as to, the entire section or particular properties, but clearly there was a recommendation that said, things are happening in this corridor, things are changing. It may be a good time to kind of revisit this corridor and take a look at it.
It
But I don't
did.
think there have been any definitive studies that have taken place. Certainly I haven't.
In the master plan, it recommended that the planning board undertake a study, and it was specifically recommending to look at, I believe it was down at the end there, to rezone. It's an existing RA15, and the recommendation I recall was to look at rezoning it multifamily.
I'd have to go back, Kathy, to be, and I don't want to.
Yeah, no.
I'd have to read it, the exact wording. You may be correct, but I don't remember the exact wording. And I don't know if we went that far, but again, the plan speaks for itself.
And my last comment would just be in terms of the reference to the zoning that was brought up by Mr. Phillips in terms of this being proposed to be rezoned to RA15. I know 227 and 209 that all sort of border 257 or RA130. The firehouse, Springbrook, you have a lot of OSGU there on Mount Campbell, the office lab space up on 340, 350. So, this particular lot does touch two other lots that are RA130. So just from a planning perspective or zoning perspective and developing things, started to keep it contiguous. So why, I guess, like you said, interesting to hear your describe it as each case has its own particular fact pattern. And I guess the fact pattern on this particular case, because of the agreement or what's being proposed, was for RA15 for this particular lot. And that just sort of goes to the precedent that one of the other planning board members was mentioning. Are we setting a precedent here? So just from just my comment is, why wouldn't it just be RA 130? But I guess that's not what being asked for. So I guess that's the reason.
Well, I wasn't making a value judgment about the reasons why. And this will obviously be discussed at the time of the public hearing. And,
Okay.
if the township committee decides to go forward, they're going to have to state reasons. I was just providing it as factual information as to someone might have asked me, well, why RA15? And I just factually pointed out that at least on two sides, the site borders RA15 as well as OSGU, which I think you're using RA130 synonymous with OSGU.
Right.
And on the other side, the actual township-owned property that's part of the Jockey Hollow Top Preserve is actually zone RA25. It's kind of interesting. So it does, but I think the point I was making is on most sides it does abut RA15. That may have been the logic behind the
Gotcha.
agreement.
All right. Great. Thank you very much for your time. And yeah, I would encourage I know you all have busy agendas and schedules and applicants and such, but if you could carve out some time maybe in the future to plan and look at that corridor, it would be appreciated by many. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.